Difui looked down at her and saw her shivering from the cold. Struggling, she put a smile on her face. He looked at her with a hint of darkness in his eyes and said, "So you—" He left his sentence hanging before turning around and walking back. Sponsored content soon. The two returned to the ice house. Gu Shijio still had not recovered, so her face was pale. Her pale lips were still trembling uncontrollably from the cold. Difui threw over a red cloak to her, and Gu Shijio wore it immediately without a second thought. She did not know what material this cloak was made of, but it felt hot. Hence, after she put it on, her hands and feet were quickly warmed up, and her pale face finally had a faint blush. "What do you want to discuss with me? Let's talk." While speaking to Gu Shijio, Difui already started preparing the deer to be cooked. Gu Shijio was stunned for a moment by his candidness. "I know that you want to withdraw from the discipleship. Can you give me a few more years?" Why do you want to wait a few more years?" Difui interrupted her. "Based on my estimations, 2 more months of practice should be able to restore you to normal. At the very least, you will be restored to the same condition you were in before you got struck by the catastrophe." Sponsored content. Difui then glanced at her wounds and continued. "You were injured because of your apprentice, right? By looking at your scars, you have taken 19 strikes of lightning for him. Your actions are indeed very heroic. I admire you for that. However, it also proves that you could still bear with the pain in your deteriorated condition. If you cancel this apprenticeship agreement, you will only be struck 9 times, which is significantly lesser than before. It is certainly within your ability to bear it. So why are you not willing to cancel the agreement?" Gu Shijio was stunned by his reply. She never expected him to understand her injuries so clearly. He even knew the punishment that Gu Shijio would have to endure if they went ahead and canceled the agreement. He seemed almost to be speaking from first-hand experience. Heaving a light sigh, Gu Shijio tried to explain her thoughts. The nature of these 2 kinds of thunderbolts is different. The thunderbolt from the catastrophe originates from auspicious energy, while the punishment for a crime against God belongs to the ominous energy. Are you trying to say that it is easier for you to resist against thunderbolts from auspicious energy? Yes, sponsored content. Have you tried? She had not. However, she remembered that someone mighty had experienced the punishment before and was completely obliterated. The image had scarred her, as she did not know that such a powerful person could be disintegrated from the thunderbolt. Nevertheless, this was just a vague memory that she recalled from the depths of her mind. She could not remember the full picture, so the story would not be convincing enough for a man who was adamant that she could endure it. "Sure enough," Difui sneered and challenged. "It seems that your obsession with taking me as your disciple is overbearing to the point where you are willing to make up excuses to deceive me." Sponsored content. Gu Shijio took a soft breath and continued. "Whether you believe it or not, what I said is true." "Oh," Difui sneered. He was too lazy to talk to negotiate with her this time, and merely kept his attention on the deer, which he now put on the grill. Gu Shijio also felt uncomfortable by the situation. There were so many people in this world who wanted to worship her as their master, but she was unwilling to accept them. Nevertheless, this disciple that she took on actually made her feel so bad for being his master. When she thought about it, she realized that she did not actually teach him anything after took him as a disciple after so many years. Hence, it made sense that he did not want to acknowledge her as his master. She looked down at the ground and thought about the situation for a moment. Seconds later, she seemed to have decided something. "Give me 3 years. I will void our agreement in 3 years." For the first time, she gave him a specific time frame. Difui was actually stunned for a moment. He looked at her and saw her holding her little knees while staring at the deer in his hand. She looked sorrowful and lonely, as if she had made a big decision unwillingly. Watching her this way stirred a feeling of guilt in his heart. However, he quickly dismissed it and replied, "Good. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us." Difui had no intention to be her apprentice, and certainly did not want to be like Fan Qianshi. Sponsor content. Just then, he had finished grilling the venison and handed her a piece of the best meat along with a pot of sweet wine. Come, drink this wine. Gu Shijio did not reject his offer. She ate the meat while sipping on the fine wine and sighed in her heart. Sure enough, after she gave him a firm promise, she got treated differently from the man. The meat that he prepared for her was delicious, the wine was good, and she had a big cloak wrapped around her body to keep her warm despite the harsh temperatures. All in all, this was actually a blissful moment. Perhaps she did not need to expect any more trouble from the man. Gu Shijio suddenly felt that it would be such a bad thing for her to give up a few years of her life if it meant that her present would be more bearable. She ate a piece of venison meat and drank another mouthful of liqueur before wrapping herself up comfortably in her big cloak and slept. When she woke up, she found herself in his arms again. Apparently, the man had fallen asleep next to her on the soft bed. She leaned his arms and had one leg wrapped around his waist. Both of them were even sharing the same blanket. Quietly, Gu Shijio rolled out of his arms like a thief in the night, trying to think of what she might have done while she was sleeping. She remembered that she experienced frostbite while resting, and her blood did not flow smoothly. However, she had no recollection of snuggling herself into his arms. How could they sleep together so closely? This was only suitable for a husband and wife. Sponsored content. Fortunately, there was no third party to see them here. Otherwise, she would not even know how to begin explaining the situation. Are you awake? How do you feel? Difui also sat up and looked at her tenderly. Gu Shijio frowned and quickly clarified. How did I get into your arms? Difui replied, good question. I was lying here comfortably, and then you rolled over, lifted my arm, and the rest is self-explanatory. I couldn't even push you away and had to sleep next to you. Gu Shijio was speechless. This certainly did not sound like her. But perhaps, deep down in her subconscious mind, she knew that she could recover better in his arms, so she automatically gravitated to him. Sponsored content. Difui stretched his waist and sighed. My arm is numb because of you. You shouldn't sleep here. Gu Shijio replied confidently. Oh, then where should I sleep? Do you want me to sleep outside the ice house? Of course not, but you can actually build another house. I can, but I only prepared one set of furnishings. It would be a bare house if I built another one. Therefore, it won't be so warm. Why don't I build one and you move out? Sponsored content. Gu Shijio remained silent. Although she did not care about living a lavish lifestyle, she was so weak now to argue with the man. Also, if she slept in an empty ice house, she would probably even fall sick. And frankly, it did not seem right for her to ask him to sleep in a bare house either, given all that he had done. Maybe it was not a big deal to sleep in the same house, since no one would see them. Difui was not a person who liked to gossip either, so he would not spread the news. All she needed to do was to be more conscious of the way she slept. And even if she ended up in his arms again, it would only mean that her recovery would be faster. Therefore, Gu Shijio did not argue on this issue anymore. She checked her body and was surprised to find that the spiritual power in her body already seemed to be flowing mildly. She could now calmly meditate. She raised her eyes to his face and asked, When are you leaving? Difui smirked. Are you rushing me away? No, it's just that I have a request. What is that? If you're leaving in the next 2 days, can you leave me the house temporarily until you come back the next time? Oh yeah, and don't throw away the unfinished venison. I could live on that for a few days. She figured that although she was able to practice her spiritual power now, she still needed to eat. Perhaps after 3 days of recuperation, she should be able to take care of herself. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Gu Shijio estimated that 3 days of rest would be enough for her to return to her normal routine. She should be able to venture into the vortex again for yet another round of cultivation. Sponsored content. Difui offered, I am here to cultivate actually for at least 2 months. Meanwhile, I can take care of you until you can take care of yourself. Gu Shijio was relieved by his benevolence and righteousness. If she only knew that he was such a kind gentleman, she would not have controlled him by using a spell in the first place. Speaking of which, she started wondering if her spell actually ever worked on him. Did he grow immune to the spell halfway through, or was he even controlled at all? Baffled, she decided to ask. After a brief pause, Difui decided to put her curiosity to bed. The spell was powerful, but I found a way to build a resistance against it. As soon as you cast a spell on me, I already knew how to free myself from it. Gu Shijio was a little annoyed. So, you just pretended to be under control. Did you treat my situation as a joke? I wanted to see what you were going to do to me, Difui answered. Sponsored content, I see. So you have been pretending all this time. Why did you suddenly stop? No point doing it now. Besides, I refuse to be taken advantage of any longer. Silence filled the air for a moment. Although it was not a big deal, Gu Shijio was still a little despaired, for she had been rejected by the same person far too many times. Are you really that reluctant to be my disciple? Do you know how many people have I rejected? Difui gave her a nonchalant look. Go after them, then. Why bother me? He was right. Nothing done forcibly was going to be agreeable. Sponsored content, humph. Someday you are going to regret this. Difui did not seem to mind at all. I will never do anything that makes me have any regrets. Also, he would never do anything without reason. Everything came with a plan. Gu Shijio silently agreed. There was no disputing that. Anyway, she did not feel like arguing anymore, for she could never win. At this point, she would even lose in a fist fight. With everything said and done, Gu Shijio decided that it was time for her to drop the matter and meditate. However, as soon as she sat down, he immediately pulled her up. You cannot do this alone. Let me help. He then pulled her into his arms and sat her down on his lap. He did not seem to any form of awkwardness despite them sitting together at such close proximity. Gu Shijio, however, was clearly uncomfortable. I do not need your help. I can cultivate on my own. Sponsored content, she started to struggle, but Difui quickly held her down by the waist and stopped her from shifting about. Why are you struggling? You should know that you will recover better in my arms, Difui answered in a puzzled tone. Obviously, Gu Shijio knew that was the case, but she was still uncomfortable. We're not exactly close to each other. Shouldn't we keep a distance? Difui questioned her point. That is strange. Before this, you kept trying to get close to me, didn't you? Gu Shijio could not reply at first, for she did not know how to handle his accusation. Nevertheless, she needed to correct him. You have always been a disciple to me. I was injured, so it was only necessary that you took care of me. Plus, the minor skin contact was unavoidable. However, now that you refuse to be my disciple, it does not feel right for me to trouble you any longer. Difui froze momentarily. Swiftly, Gu Shijio rose and walked out of his embrace. She went to another corner of the room and started meditating on her own. Meanwhile, Difui watched as she became completely absorbed in her meditation. All of a sudden sense of recklessness struck him. He used to have the privilege to be by her side, but he pushed her away. As for Gu Shijio, her recovery did not happen as planned. After a month, only 10% of her spiritual power was recovered. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsors game to support us. Gu Zijia's slow improving condition had limited her power and abilities. There were many things that she simply could not do with such a limited level of spiritual power, so there was not much point of her returning home. This left her with no choice but to stay for another month. Sponsor content for the past 2 months, Difui was always there. He took care of her and even went hunting for her so that she would not starve. Sometimes he would guide her into a vortex so that she could absorb more spiritual energy. Since there were only 2 of them there, they would often talk to one another to pass the time. It appeared that the man was genuinely there to meditate, too. When she went into a vortex to amass more spiritual energy, Difui would find himself another whirling mass of spiritual energy to meditate in as well. Nevertheless, he would always come out a little earlier than her, so she often found him standing in the distance while watching her with a crooked smile. Sometimes, she would find him organizing their food supply or perusing some documents that required his examination. Other times, he would just be reading to accumulate knowledge. Gu Shijio knew that he was, in fact, a man of great ambitions. He managed to influence the development of 2 kingdoms in just a few years. The achievement alone was enough to prove his worth. Sponsored content. After capturing the respect of the people of the 2 kingdoms, Gu Shijio wondered what his next target would be. With such progress, it would not be difficult for him to bring all 6 worlds under his control in less than a century. While pondering the man's next steps, a sudden realization struck her. Gu Zijia's existence served only to protect and keep watch over all 6 worlds. But if Di Fui could somehow bring all 6 worlds under his control and government, her immortalization and absence would not make any difference. Deep down, she had a feeling that the man was born to be the ruler of all 6 worlds. It just seemed so right. The only flaw in this entire plan was his reluctance to be her disciple. Otherwise, she would be able to teach him everything that she could before her passing. In fact, Di Fui was a better candidate to become the next creator of the universe compared to Fan Qianshi. Di Fui, what do you think about my role here? Gu Shijio finally asked. Sponsored content. Di Fui was reading when she suddenly raised the question. So he looked at her in slight confusion and asked, "What about your role?" "I am the creator of the universe, a divine being who is worshipped by all." "What about that? Would you like to take over my role and become the ruler of the 6 worlds?" Sponsored content. I would not like that at all. Di Fui rejected without the slightest hesitation. Triggered, Gu Shijio continued. You are only masking your true intentions, aren't you? I can see that you are inclined to power. Otherwise, why would you spend so much effort and energy in reorganizing the monster and celestial kingdoms? As you can already see, you have greater influence than the Monster King and the Emperor Immortal and are clearly ranked above their royal status. I think you're also planning to bring the remaining kingdoms under your control, aren't you? Don't get me wrong, I do not see this as something negative. In fact, I am happy that you were able to bring peace to 2 worlds. The great plan of yours requires a lot of planning and effort, with many great obstacles that lie ahead. Even your safety will be at stake. However, if you agree to become the creator of the universe, the whole plan will no longer be a problem. Di Fui answered with the slightest interest. I find it more interesting if I achieve it solely with my own power. Whatever I want, I shall get. Therefore, I have no interest in taking your role. Nevertheless, he found her statement a little odd. Wait, since you are a divine being, that would mean that you are immortal, aren't you? Why should anyone need to succeed you? Gu Shijio jokingly replied. Even a divine being will eventually face her death or become dormant for a very long time, as I have done for the past tens of thousands of years. If I had a successor to govern the world, it would not have become the mess that it is today. So you're looking for a successor. Haven't you already found one? Gu Shijio did not answer. Do you still insist on taking me as your disciple? Are you going against your own words right now? Gu Shijio decided to ignore his questions. From that moment onwards, she never brought it up again. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. It was a common belief that when a man and a woman worked together, the chemistry between the opposite sexes would often result in positive outcomes. This belief was proven with the dynamic duo's increased efficiency. Sponsored content. Just 2 months later, Gu Zijia's spiritual power had substantially recovered by more than 20%, which was even higher than expected. Clearly, Di Fui had something to do with that. The unexpected increase in Gu Zijia's spiritual power had also largely enhanced her kung fu. Therefore, she now had access to some of the spells that she had not been able to use for a long while. Clouded by the satisfaction, the more Gu Shijio looked at Di Fui, the more pleasing he became to her eyes. She cultivated all alone in the glacier for 6 months before, but the painstaking effort only ended up increasing her spiritual power by 2%. That seemed to be the maximum that she could achieve. Never had she thought that her cultivation this time around would result in significant improvements. She suspected that the little ice cabin that Di Fui had built must have contributed to the unexpected improvement. Perhaps Di Fui's regular embrace was part of the reason, too. They were not exactly close, so there was no way she could ask him to hang around just in case she needed him again. However, she could talk to him about letting her keep the ice cabin. After all, she needed a place to stay during her next visit to the glacier. Sponsored content, she told him about keeping the cabin, and he quickly agreed with only one condition. He requested her presence for a trip to the Devil Kingdom. Puzzled, she studied him for a while to figure out his intention. I believe that your next visit to the Devil Kingdom is by invitation, right? Anyway, you have earned enough respect for them to treat you like an honorable guest, so there should not be any need for me to be there. My presence is not required to make you look any better, so why bother? Smilingly, Di Fui responded somewhat ambiguously. Are you really there to make me look better? Can't you be there just to bask in my fame and status? Gu Shijio turned her head away from him. Stop trying to fool me. I am not related to you in any way. Di Fui did not know how to answer her. He just stared at her blankly as he took another step forward. Is it a yes or a no? Sponsored content. Gu Shijio did not even look back. Relax. I only need 3 more days here. See you then. She waved goodbye to him. Slowly, she walked into the blizzard again. Di Fui stood and watched as she gradually disappeared in the snow. A moment later, he returned to the ice cabin and took a walk around the house while tracing the walls from time to time. It did not take long before a complete set of jewelry emerged in different corners. There was a hairpin, a necklace, a bracelet, and a pair of earrings. The jewelry set was the one that he offered to Gu Shijio as a gift not too long ago. He picked them up and started talking to the accessories. She is unaware that part of her speedy recovery is because of you. I know that she will eventually accept these gifts. It is only a matter of time. When I am accomplished and recognized, I will formally give you out to her again. He stood frozen for a while, trying to immerse himself in her sweet scent that still lingered in the air. With his eyes closed, he seemed to open up his arms in a hugging motion. Sponsored content. Gu Shijio was still worried about her disciple, so she decided to return to Tianyin Valley to examine his injuries. What had happened between them was unpleasant, so she decided to keep a low profile and snuck into Tianyin Valley without alerting anyone. Everything in the Tianyin Valley was just the same. The serenity remained undisturbed. Even with her absence for the past 2 months, the place was still surprisingly tidy and well organized. While maneuvering through the Tianyin Valley, Gu Shijio hid her tracks by using the invisibility spell. By merely eavesdropping on a conversation between her servants, she knew that Fan Qianqi's injuries were almost fully recovered. He was able to walk on his own and had started to work hard on improving his kung fu. His impressive achievement in upgrading his status to a great deity had also attracted many to come here and congratulate him. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Fan Qianshi was a well-traveled man, so he had made many friends from around the world. Sponsored content. When Gu Shijio visited, she noticed a few groups of people coming in and out to visit him. These visitors were from different worlds, and some of which were elites from where they resided. Gu Shijio was quite delighted for her disciple. Although Fan Qianshi had done something that he should not have, she could not deny that he had got the potential to be very successful. As long as she could erase his emotional entanglement for her, he would be an excellent successor to her role. Hopefully, his last punishment had made it clear to him where to draw the line. Sponsored content. Gu Shijio continued to wander around the valley, and before she knew it, she was already in Fan Qianqi's backyard. Fan Qianshi was there, but he was not alone. He was with a young lady dressed in light purple who had a lovely face and a distinct devil aura. Gu Shijio knew about her identity, as she was the daughter of the Devil King. Coincidentally, she happened to be the king's favorite daughter. She was a little young, ignorant, and slightly overbearing. Yet, overall, she was not a bad person by any means. She was known as Yin Mingzhu. They first crossed paths when Fan Qianshi was in the Devil Kingdom on a business trip. The princess fell in love with him at first sight and began clinging to him like a leech, but the affection was, unfortunately, not mutual. At the time, Fan Qianshi kept trying to stay away from her as he found her affection somewhat troubling and annoying. Fan Qianshi once talked about it with Gu Shijio, but she was not quite bothered by such petty matters. A great man would naturally attract the eyes of many women. In fact, she was happy for him. Sponsored content. As soon as Fan Qianshi saw her expression of delight, he turned his head all of a sudden and briskly walked away, leaving Gu Shijio in a rather awkward situation. She was quite puzzled by the oddity of his behavior back then, thinking that he must have come to his rebellious phase as a teenager. Retrospectively, things made more sense. The princess visited a few times to see him, but was never let in. This time, it would seem that he finally let her in, and here they were in Fan Qianshi's backyard. Had Fan Qianshi changed his mind? This time, Gu Shijio was interested in finding out more, so she stayed invisible and watched. The pair seemed to be fighting. Fan Qianshi remained stern, while Yin Mingzhu was obviously annoyed. It did not take too long for Gu Shijio to get a hold of what was going on. Yin Mingzhu was here to tell Fan Qianshi some news about the Devil Kingdom, which was why he finally allowed her to enter. Instead of talking about the news that mattered, Yin Mingzhu started bringing up nonsense to Fan Qianshi. She began to talk about how much she missed him, which was annoying to him. Finally, Fan Qianshi could not stand it anymore and asked her to leave. He would only expect her to talk about business matters if she intended to stay. Sponsored content. Yin Mingzhu could not hide the bitterness on her face, but was too timid to argue with him. So she told him what he needed to know about the Devil Kingdom. She did not tell him everything, though, because she did not feel appreciated. She used it to make a deal with Fan Qianshi to continually bring him news about the Devil Kingdom only if she was allowed to enter the Tianyin Valley freely. The information was obviously important to Fan Qianshi, so he soon agreed. However, he also made his stance very clear. No matter what Yin Mingzhu attempted to do, he would not accept her as his partner. She would only be a friend to him. When Gu Shijio arrived at the scene, Fan Qianshi had just made himself clear to her. In fact, everything that happened before was based on the speculation that Gu Shijio made based on their interactions. In utter disappointment, Yin Mingzhu complained, "Am I not good enough? Do you know that I have turned down many men in the Devil Kingdom because I have feelings for you? Are you in love with someone else? Is it Wu Qinyan? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us." Fan Qianshi was irritated. "It is none of your business." Sponsored content. Yin Mingzhu clenched her fists in frustration. "Is she really the one? I know that she has been taking care of you since you were hurt. She is only a junior apprentice of mine. Who is it then? I do not believe that I am inferior to anyone else." With a sigh, Fan Qianshi tried to calm down and said, "I have fallen for someone else. She is a goddess to me. Every little thing about her is better than any other woman." Yin Mingzhu was dumbstruck. "A goddess? Are you referring to the Divine Lord?" Panicked, Fan Qianshi quickly responded, "Don't be ridiculous. You need not care about her identity. I will only change my mind if she is married to someone else." Sponsored content. After a moment of shock, Yin Mingzhu started weeping bitter tears. "I will now tell you the same. I will never stop loving you unless you are married to someone else. As long as you're still a bachelor, I will always be around." Then she stormed off. Unfortunately, she did not see Wu Qinyan, who happened to be walking right through the gate at the same time. Unsteadily, she staggered to her feet and fell. Politely, Wu Qinyan offered her a hand to help her up. But before Wu Qinyan could even ask anything, Yin Mingzhu had already pushed her away. In a rage, she stormed out of the garden. "Young master, what have you done to provoke her?" Wu Qinyan put down a tray on the table with all sorts of medication as she asked. Fan Qianshi briefly replied, "Forget about her. Any news about our master?" Sponsored content. "Nothing," Wu Qinyan responded while shaking her head. Fan Qianshi sat and thought about the matter for a moment. Abruptly, he rose to his feet and was about to leave. "Young master, where are you going?" Wu Qinyan quickly followed. Useless. How did so many people fail to locate someone well and alive? I will do this myself. Young master, you have yet to be fully recovered before you leave. You should not push yourself too much. Don't worry about her master. I believe that her kung fu is powerful enough to fend off any danger. She will probably be back in a few days. You keep saying this over and over again. In a few days? How many days have passed since then? Fan Qianqi's face was filled with rage. I am so worried that something might have happened to her. She would not have gone out of touch for so long if she were fine. The Divine Lord's whereabouts have always been uncertain. There were also times in the past when she was completely out of touch. You should not stress about it too much. Sponsored content. You know nothing. Fan Qianshi gave her a snort of disapproval before walking away. Maybe the Divine Lord is avoiding you. Wu Qinyan finally said what she kept in her heart. In disbelief, Fan Qianshi stopped and turned to her. What did you just say? He asked in a rather unpleasant manner. Wu Qinyan could no longer keep quiet about it, so she started speaking her mind. You know it very well. You have been developing inappropriate feelings for our master. She was completely annoyed by it, so she punished you. Young master, haven't you had enough punishment already? Are you trying to make her even angrier? Young master, the Divine Lord is our master. You should not be doing this to your master. Please, I beg you to drop the obsession and stop holding on to your feelings for her. Fan Qianshi looked at her sternly. You too? I know she's my master, but what is wrong about that? Are there any rules that forbid the relationship between a master and a disciple? But she is the Divine Lord, the creator of the universe. She is not just anyone's master. It is incomparable. Fan Qianshi answered scornfully. So what if she is the creator of the universe? To me, she is not only my master, but a woman as well. I am the only man for her, and she is the only woman for me. Wu Qinyan could not believe what he just said. Young master, you should not have said that. Our master would not be pleased if she heard it. She would punish you or even banish you again. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsors game to support us. Fan Qianshi was triggered. With his fists clenched, he decided to look past his concerns and told her how he truly felt. I will never stop pursuing her unless she is married to someone else. Even if she banishes me, I will still come back to her and stick around stubbornly. Sponsored content. Wu Qinyan was dumbfounded. Gu Shijio, on the other hand, was starting to get distressed by him. After weighing her decisions, she chose to leave right away. I will never stop pursuing her unless she is married to someone else. His words kept playing back in Gu Zijia's head, pushing her to come up with a solution. Sponsored content. He was the only disciple that she ever had, so his complete banishment was not an option. Moreover, banishing him would not solve the problem at all, as he seemed very determined to pursue her, regardless. Killing him was not an option, either. So it seemed that there was only one way she could end the entanglement for good, by marrying someone else. However, there was a problem with that option. She only had 3 years left to live. There were many things that she needed to attend to within that time. So, finding a relationship was surely not a priority. Even if she chose to marry someone else, it would only be a show to fool Fan Qianshi. Sponsored content. Besides, Fan Qianqi's keen intelligence was not to be underestimated. If she simply put on a show, there was no way he would believe it. Things would be worse if he found out about the truth. Given his rebellious behavior, he would probably be driven to do unimaginable things. She believed that Fan Qianshi would not harm the man that she chose to marry while she was around. But once she was immortalized, perhaps the man would become an unfortunate victim of Fan Qianqi's rage. Gu Shijio did not want to push any man to his death, so the man that she chose to marry had to be single and superior in many ways. There would be no feelings involved, only business. She did not want to leave any problems for the future. Sponsor content. She wondered who would be the best candidate, so she started creating a list of possible men, but none of them truly fit her criteria. Some of them were disqualified because of their incompetence, while some were ineligible due to their personalities. Others had feelings for her, whom she would very much like to avoid. Just as she was about to give up hope, Di Fuya's name somehow came into light. Many of Di Fuya's qualities could immediately outshine Fan Qianqi's. Also, he had always kept his distance, so there was no way he would fall in love with her. Therefore, he seemed to fit her criteria perfectly. However, there was a problem. It was complicated to talk business with the man, for there was nothing that she could use to buy him over. He was wealthy enough to resist any of her offers. Also, he was already irritated enough by her consistent approach to keeping him as a disciple. He would surely not approve of the whole idea of them getting married, and must think that she must have gone mad from first pursuing him to be her disciple, and now her husband. So, perhaps the man was not an appropriate candidate, after all. But who else could she possibly find? She was troubled. She spent the next 2 days looking for a candidate, but could not find any. It was now time for her to pay her dues by accompanying Di Fui into the Devil Kingdom. The place where they agreed to meet was in the closest city to the entrance of the Devil Kingdom. The devil aura in the kingdom was powerful and would be harmful to anyone who was not a part of the Devil Kingdom. As an outsider, one must obtain a special kind of material, known as the devil-resisting herb, to protect themselves from the devil aura. Nevertheless, since Gu Shijio was the creator of a universe, she was born with an extraordinary physique that was immune to the devil aura and did not need the herb. Di Fui was different from her, so he would still need it. Hence, it hardly surprised her that he chose to meet in the city. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Gu Shijio was there early and did not spot Di Fui yet. She felt a little guilty about the way she had treated him, so she decided to retrieve the devil-resisting herb for him first so that they could enter the Devil Kingdom at once when he arrived. Sponsored content. The devil-resisting herb was very precious, but with money, it was easily accessible. Gu Shijio thought that it would be just like a regular shopping day, but little had she known that every piece of devil-resisting herb was already sold out almost everywhere in the city. Everyone told her the same thing. All devil-resisting herbs had been bought by a mysterious client just 2 days ago. The amount of money offered by the mysterious client was rather remarkable. Therefore, the whole deal went down without any hassle. None of the businessmen hesitated when it came to making good money. Gu Shijio could tell that something was not quite right. Nevertheless, it did not change the fact that she still needed the devil-resisting herb for Di Fui, which was still nowhere to be found at the moment. Sponsored content. Based on her vast knowledge, she knew that the devil-resisting herb could be found on a mountain in the vicinity, but the path to get there was perilous. Only people with the power of a mighty immortal could enter and collect the herbs. However, since the devil-resisting herb was unavailable in the marketplace, she reckoned that the collectors had exhausted the supply up in the mountain as well. Otherwise, they would have collected enough herbs to replenish the ones that were sold. But searching the markets would seem even more futile for now. Gu Shijio carefully weighed her options and decided that she should still venture into the mountain for the herb. After all, the mountain was not too far away from the Devil Kingdom, only a few hundred miles. Also, she was equipped with immunity against the devil aura and could teleport. Therefore, the journey would not take long. Sponsored content. Shionglai Mountain was regarded as the holy mountain in the vicinity, held in high regard by all of the people in the Devil Kingdom. Generally, not all the inhabitants of the Devil Kingdom were well-cultured or educated, so the name that was given to the mountain clearly reflected their straightforwardness. The highest peak of Shionglai Mountain was the only place where the devil-resisting herbs were found. The mountain had some of the highest peaks in the kingdom that were all in the same lofty solitude, with many ferocious beasts that scavenged for food. Apart from the collectors, no one would risk their lives entering the area. Surprisingly, she saw that there were hundreds of troops from the Devil Kingdom that were guarding the territory. Therefore, the road to the mountain was blocked. No one could possibly go through the checkpoints. Surely, they could stop anyone else, but not Gu Shijio. She used her invisibility skill to hide her tracks while she listened to the soldiers' conversation. That was where she found out that the regent of the Devil Kingdom actually ordered the closure of the mountain. No one was allowed to collect the herbs for a month. Sponsored content, needless to say, the regent must be the one who had bought all of the devil-resisting herbs from the market. Was he protecting himself from someone? Could it be Di Fui that he was worried about? Just spending a few moments eavesdropping the conversations between the soldiers made Gu Shijio well informed of the current situation in the Devil Kingdom. Please visit our list novel. Kam the Devil King was the ruler of the Devil Kingdom, but the power of governance and administration was in the hands of the regent. This regent used to be the right-hand man of the deceased Devil King. Before the Devil King was immortalized, he handed his only son over to the regent so that there was someone to care for the orphan. As time progressed, the power of governance in the hands of the regent grew stronger, while the Devil King was more or less useless. The current Devil King was a ruler only by name. Gu Shijio then recalled her birthday celebration. She remembered that the Devil King came along to celebrate with her, and like everyone else, he invited Di Fui to the Devil Kingdom but was turned down. Di Fui was unavailable to take up any jobs due to some personal matters. The regent must be aware of the invitation by the Devil King, so he had to raise his guards high to prevent Di Fui from entering the Devil Kingdom. However, the whole operation was a little exaggerated in Gu Zijia's opinion. She continued to observe the troops, but soon, a man and a woman abruptly landed right next to one of the groups of armed men. Dumbstruck, all of them then greeted courteously Prince Xiaoyao, Princess Liu Xiang. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. The man was undeniably good-looking and had delicate features and elegant charm. He had a paper fan in his hand, which labeled him as a typical good-for-nothing from a wealthy family. The way he smiled made Gu Shijio feel slightly uncomfortable. Sponsored content: the lady was a beauty too, with a bright display of nobility and prominence in the air around her that kept her aloof from everyone else. Gu Shijio soon recognized them. The man was the brother of the Devil King, Jusi, known as the profligate son of the royal family who made no attempts to achieve anything in his life. His only hobbies were traveling, bird feeding, and cricket fighting. The brothel was where he spent most of his time at, with many beautiful women as his companions. The lady was known as Meng Liu Xiang, the beloved daughter of the regent, Meng Tianqing. She was born with talent in kung fu. In just a few centuries, she was able to achieve the level of a mighty immortal, thus gaining her the name of being the #1 talent in the Devil Kingdom. Many men had asked for her hand, but she was only interested in Jusi. She would follow him around whenever she could. The regent disliked Jusi's playboy attitude. Otherwise, his daughter would be married to the man by now. Sponsored content: Jusi, on the other hand, was reluctant to be controlled by a woman. He preferred his life of leisure and freedom. Therefore, he ignored Meng Liuxiang most of the time. In fact, he was slightly annoyed about how clingy she was, so he would stay as far away as he could. Nevertheless, his kung fu was nowhere near as good as hers. Every time he went to hide, she would always find him using the tracking spell. Gu Shijio never thought that she would see them both here today. From their interaction, she knew that the pair were traveling. However, the mountain was completely closed, so, without the regent's permission, no one was allowed to get close to the peaks. These soldiers did not care much about Jusi, but were intimidated by Meng Liuxiang. She shouted at them furiously, and they immediately let her in. Gu Shijio was curious about what they were going to do, so she tailed them. Sponsored content: the devil-resisting herbs were flourishing at the peak. The place became an expanse of lush green crops that danced in the breeze. There were at least 180 pieces of herbs in the field. When the herbs were ready to be harvested, the hills became ablaze with green blossoms. Like pieces of green flowers, the herbs looked very enticing. Nevertheless, it was not easy to collect the herbs, as 4 ferocious beasts surrounded the field. The beasts would remain still when there was no one around. However, when there was an intruder within a 30-foot radius, these 4 creatures would be triggered into a frenzy. Right at the danger zone, Yin Jusi and Meng Liuxiang started arguing. Initially, Yin Jusi was only planning to have a walk around the mountain, but soon changed his mind when he saw the herbs. He wanted to collect some and bring them home as souvenirs. Meng Liuxiang was obviously against the idea. Their entry to the peak was already going against her father's will. Therefore, his collection of herbs would be a monstrous crime. Sponsored content, however, Yin Jusi insisted that he would not go back empty-handed. All he asked for was only one herb. Needless to say, the two of them could not reach an agreement, so the heated argument continued. Meng Liuxiang kept using her father as her excuse to go against Yin Jusi's plan, thus infuriating him. I am the brother of the Devil King. Am I not allowed to collect just a few plants? Furthermore, your father is the regent. The lady started talking back recklessly. Yin Jusi, you are trying to rise in revolt, aren't you? I know everything. You are dissatisfied with my father's governance, so you have been scheming with many officials to have my father dismissed. Shocked, Yin Jusi clearly did not understand. What nonsense are you talking about? Meng Liuxiang sarcastically replied. Nonsense? Did you really think that you could keep all of this from me? I was only playing dumb all along. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Chapter 2867. Marry Me, 2. I know that you secretly contacted Di Fui about 2 months ago, didn't you? You want him to assist the Devil King, so that together, all of you can dismiss my father from his position. Yin Jusi suddenly stopped speaking. He pinched his lips into a thin line and said nothing more. Meanwhile, Meng Liuxiang continued to lash out at him. Yin Jusi, although my father disapproves of you, he never mistreated you, all because of me. Seriously, you should stop making yourself his enemy. Otherwise, not even I can keep you alive. If my father found out about the rebellious plans of yours, he would be really mad. After a pause, Yin Jusi suddenly became very firm in his stance. This kingdom has always been my family's territory. Your father is the only rebel. Meng Liuxiang, if I insisted on carrying out my plan, what are you going to do about it? Meng Liuxiang shone her sword before his eyes right away. I will have to kill you. Yin Jusi, I like you, but I shall never turn against my father. Instantly, Yin Jusi stopped waving the paper fan in his hand. All right, do it then. Meng Liuxiang, I now offer you the chance to fight with me, he said. In an instant, he turned his paper fan into a sword. Gu Shijio was hiding in the corner, quietly observing the couple that had just turned their backs against one another and became enemies. In fact, she was particularly drawn to Yin Jusi. Before the showdown, he used to have the attitude of a playboy. However, his character had instantaneously switched from a playboy to that of a nobleman. It was just like a mask that he had stripped off, finally revealed another side of him, matured, sharp, and grim. It would appear that the man was only concealing his abilities and carrying the image of a playboy. Gu Shijio could tell, just by one look, that the man was nothing short of extraordinary. It was a shame that the princess was unaware of his true colors. She had an excellent foundation in kung fu, but was too reckless and naive. It would appear as though she had just dug her own grave. Yin Jusi was, undoubtedly, a gentleman. Although his plans had been uncovered, he did not attack Meng Liuxiang right away. Instead, he offered her a fair chance to fight, though the lady might not be a match to him at all. Intrigued by the ongoing situation, Gu Shijio decided to keep watching. Meng Liuxiang had never thought that Yin Jusi would be courageous enough to fight her. You have just made a death wish, she teased arrogantly. She decided that he needed to be taught a lesson so that he would know when to back off. Yin Jusi gave his sword a flick and answered icily, Meng Liuxiang, I will do my best, and that is what I hope you will do too. Let's make it a matter of life and death. Meng Liuxiang answered his statement by launching her first strike. Thus, the battle began. There were merely 10 moves in the entire battle. 10 moves were enough to settle the matter and put it to rest. As soon as the battle ended, one of them was about to die. Meng Liuxiang was already lying on the ground, with blood slowly tracing down her cheeks. She stared at Juicy in utter disbelief, struggling to find her words. You have been hiding your true self all along." Juicy transformed the sword back into his folded paper fan and replied, "Meng Liuxiang, you are now defeated." Meng Liuxiang was in critical condition at that point. I did not do my best," she struggled to reply. Juicy spoke slowly. "You would not be able to defeat me even if you did." Meng Liuxiang did not answer. In fact, she was not able to say anything more. Chapter 2868. Marry Me 3. Juicy raised his hand and pointed at her temple. "You have helped me a lot in the past, and for that, I shall keep you alive, but you are not allowed to spoil my plan. You should stay here quietly for a while. In 8 years, you will recover." A swirl of devil energy surrounded Meng Liuxiang, turning every inch of her body into lifeless stone. Eventually, she became a dark green jade statue. Juicy then placed her in a pile of stones, which made it unlikely for anyone to identify her, for every stone looked almost the same. He then turned to look at the 4 ferocious beasts in the vicinity. Confidently, he rolled up his sleeves and attacked them. The 4 beasts howled in unison before throwing themselves at the man. Indeed, it was a great battle. Gu Shijiu finally had the chance to see how great Juicy's kung fu actually was from his second battle. As soon as the fight began, his thunderous charge of attacks was very breathtaking. When the battle was over, he stood in calmness and serenity at the other end of the field, as if nothing had happened. He must be a great deity by now, but only publicly revealed himself as a golden immortal. Meng Liuxiang had no chance against him at all, really. Even if she really did her best, there was no possibility that she could defeat him. She would end up becoming a stone, regardless. Gu Shijiu started regarding the man with high esteem. She continued to observe him, and a sudden inspiration came to mind. The current Devil King was incompetent and muddle-headed, thus giving the regent a chance to snatch his authority. To make matters worse, the regent was also known for his utter violence. He was prone to murder and manslaughter, with no regard for the Devil King at all. Anyone who was not on his team would be slaughtered immediately. Sometimes, the victim's entire family would be involved, too. The Devil Kingdom was never at peace because of this dictator. Many people had to suffer injustice with infuriating devastation. Even the common people had to suffer, burdened with all sorts of taxes. Any resistance would be met with violence, as well as the death of many innocent lives. Fortunately, the Devil King's son was naturally a ruler. He should be the one that Di Fui was trying to help. If the man succeeded the throne, it would be a blessing to the people of the Devil Kingdom. Although the beasts were savagely fierce, they were no match to Juicy. About an hour later, all 4 beasts were well beaten. Severely injured, they lay almost motionless on the ground with no intention to interfere with Juicy's business on the field anymore. Soon, Juicy managed to collect the number of herbs needed. Distracted, he turned around and saw a young lady standing not too far away from him. The lady was dressed entirely in blue, with her long hair brushing over her shoulder. She looked only about 17 years old and stood gracefully, surrounded by a tint of auspicious aura. Breathlessly, there were no words he could possibly use to describe her ethereal beauty. Frozen, he stood watching the lady in astonishment. He thought that he already had everything in his surroundings under control, as even the slightest disturbance would have caught his attention. Therefore, the latter's presence was an unpleasant surprise. He did not even know for how long she had been around. More importantly, the lady was very intimidating despite her youthful appearance. He felt the need to surrender to her authority, even when they were standing pretty far apart. Who are you?" Smilingly, the lady answered his confusion. "The god of creation." In shock, Juicy felt as though the entire scene was surreal. He was dumbstruck and in disbelief. Obviously, they had never met before, so he still had his doubts. When did you? How long have you been here?" The lady was actually Gu Shijiu. She casually flicked her fingers and nonchalantly replied, longer than you have. Injusi did not utter a word. Meanwhile, Gu Shijio sat down on a rock and smilingly continued, "Are you going to kill me as well?" Injusi gave in. "I dare not." He responded courteously, but the folded paper fan in his hand was still tightly in his grasp. Obviously, he did not completely trust her. Chapter 2869. Marry Me. 4. Gu Shijio pretended that she did not notice the oddity in his behavior. There's been quite a big fuss here, but none of the soldiers seem to have been alerted. Don't you think it is a little strange? Perplexed, Injusi had thought the same. He was prepared if any troops were to approach him, but not one soldier showed up at the peak. He was smart enough to make the correct speculation. "Divine Lord, you are the one helping me, aren't you?" Gu Shijio softly answered. "I have not done much, actually. I have only secured the peak with a soundproof wizardry barrier." Even though it did not sound like much, it was the very help that he needed. Injusi bowed before her as a token of gratitude. "Thank you very much, Divine Lord." Anxious and slightly doubtful, he asked, "May I know what brings you here? Are you really here just to help me out?" "I'm here to talk business," Gu Shijio smilingly said. "Business? What sort of business?" Injusi looked at her in bewilderment. As the Divine Lord, she was known to be the greatest and the strongest person that ever existed. There should be nothing that she could not solve or acquire on her own. What sort of business was there to talk about? Gu Shijio continued, "I have only helped you to keep the volume down so that your identity would not be exposed. But if you left the checkpoint by the hill all alone, it would definitely cause an alarm. With so many of the soldiers there, you might not be able to get away so quickly. Have you thought about that?" With a sigh, Injusi had to agree with her. He had thought about the consequences, but the battle was inevitable. So, he thought he would just get it over with there and then. Nevertheless, since the creator of the universe had brought it up, he humbly asked for Gu Zijia's opinion. "Divine Lord, have you got anything in mind?" "Of course. I will solve the problem for you. Only if you promise me a favor in return. Your safety will thus be guaranteed if you agree to my terms." Still puzzled, Injusi was unsure of the task that he was about to do for the Divine Lord. With a deep breath and a bow, he nonetheless agreed to her. "May I know how I can be of service to you? As long as I can fulfill the task, I will give everything I can to achieve it. I am willing to risk my life." "There is no need for you to risk your life. What I will ask for is really simple. You can easily make it happen." "What is it?" "Marry me." Injusi could no longer keep his mind straight. The folded paper fan slipped from his grasp and fell right onto the ground. He could not believe his ears. He was utterly surprised that the Divine Lord was actually one of his many admirers. Although he was well aware of his popularity, he did not realize it was to this extent. He felt like he was the luckiest man on earth. "Are you asking me to marry you?" he stammered. Gu Shijio had to make herself clear. "Of course, it is not a real marriage. I only need you to play the role of my husband for the next 3 years." Injusi remained quiet. He did not understand why the facade was necessary, but there did not seem to be a reason for him to reject the request. Quickly, he accepted his fate and agreed to her. Gu Shijio had never thought that a simple visit to the Devil Kingdom would solve her current biggest problem. Delighted, she also added, "Don't worry. When everything is done, I will compensate you fairly for your contribution." Then, she made a swift turn and transformed herself into Meng Liuxiang. "Let's go," she said. In awe, Injusi was finally convinced of her identity. Only she could disguise herself as someone else so quickly and so perfectly. Thus, he followed her lead. "Where are you going after this?" Gu Shijio casually asked. At this point, Injusi would rather be honest with her. "I'm going to meet National Master D in Huanglai City." "Have you guys agreed to meet there?" Gu Shijio was quite surprised. "We agreed to meet today at 1:30 in the Tianfeng restaurant of Huanglai City," Injusi answered with a firm nod. Chapter 2870. Dowry and Betrothal Gifts. Gu Shijio realized that it was only half an hour away from her supposed meeting with Di Fui. They had agreed to meet at 2 o'clock and at the same place. Perhaps Defui needed to see Juicy first to obtain the devil-resisting herbs before meeting her, so that all three of them could enter the Devil Kingdom together. Since the three of them were going to meet at the same place, they might as well meet at the same time. Therefore, Gushijo told Juicy about her meeting with Defui and that she would like all of them to meet together. He agreed. With the help of the god of creation, there was no way Juicy could not take control of the kingdom. Gushijo made for a great companion by walking through the checkpoint with Juicy. None of the soldiers suspected a thing. As practiced, Juicy turned to her and said in front of the soldiers, "Liu Xiang, you should go back to Shura City first. There is somewhere else I need to be. See you around." Gushijo acknowledged it. "All right, I will wait for you in Shura City." She then leaped onto the back of a black crane and left the hill. Juicy, on the other hand, took his ride on another black crane and went in the opposite direction. These soldiers could not help but make fun of Juicy, claiming that the princess must be blind to have her eyes locked on a playboy with nothing but fancy clothes. Nevertheless, with a sigh, they wished they could be just as lucky. Little did they know that the real princess was still at the peak, unable to call out to them for help. After traveling on the black crane for a few miles, Gushijo then teleported away. She met up with Juicy before leaving the Devil Kingdom. Although Huanglai City belonged to the human world, its close proximity to the Devil Kingdom had attracted many visitors. There was an unwritten law that prohibited any fight or outrage between the humans and the devils. Once violated, the parties involved would be served with a death penalty. Therefore, the people of different worlds were able to live in peace in the city. Tianfeng Restaurant was the place with the best food in Huanglai City. So many high officials of the Devil Kingdom and the human world were their regular customers. No one knew that Juicy was actually the owner of the Tianfeng Restaurant. He had his own private room here in the restaurant, so he took Gushijo there to wait for Defui's arrival. They were an hour early, so Defui was not around yet. Juicy asked the waiter to prepare a pot of tea and specifically requested for the best tea leaves around. It was good to have some tea while killing time. Gushijo could not show her true self here in public, so she took the camouflage of a regular woman. Having a beautiful woman next to Juicy was only a normal occurrence, so Gushijo's presence did not attract any unnecessary attention. Juicy was an excellent brewer. The pot of tea had a good taste and a marvelous fragrance. Gushijo watched with delight as he brewed the tea in front of her from infusion to presentation. She then took a sip of the tea and was happy with its taste. Right after that, they started talking about their wedding plans. She wanted to get it done as soon as possible, as any undue delay might bring more trouble than necessary. She wanted the ceremony to be as grand as possible so that everyone from all 6 worlds would learn about it. It was a great deal with excellent prospects for Juicy, so he agreed to Gushijo's every request. Everything was still very surreal to him, so he could not believe that any of it was happening. He then tried to think about how the wedding would influence his plans. Even with Defui's help, there were still many things that needed to be done for him to get to where he wanted. He would need at least 3 years to achieve his goal, assuming he would even survive the dangers that lay ahead. But with the creator of the universe as his wife, it was only natural for him to succeed the throne as the Devil King. All of his people and the officials would definitely support him. Chapter 2871, Dowry and Betrothal Gifts. 2. Juicy would also garner the support of his people and the highest officials in the Devil Kingdom. If he worked a little harder, perhaps there was even a chance that he could unite all of 6 worlds into one. The offer of marriage from Gushijo appeared to be an unexpected windfall for the man. It still felt like a dream to him. In order to make sure that it was real, he decided to give his thigh a hard pinch. The pain reminded him that he was indeed living in reality. And just like that, he was on cloud 9 once he realized that the wedding was really happening. After giving it some thought, he suddenly reached into his bag to retrieve an emerald green jade and a pearl the size of a fist. Seemingly inadequate, he then put down another dagger forged of solid iron and a black pill on the table. "Please accept these," he offered. Puzzled, Gu Shijio stared at him for an answer. Juicy blushed a little. These betrothal gifts are all that I can offer at the moment. Sorry that they may be a little simple. Divine Lord, I hope you can accept these first. I promise to offer more in the future when I can afford it. Gu Shijio did not know what to say. She knew all about the nature of the goods. The jade piece was crafted from the highest class of emerald jade stone, and the pearl was equipped with a spiritual aura that money could not buy. As for the iron dagger, it was considered a magical item. Its spiritual intelligence allowed it to be controlled by its master via a telepathic connection. Finally, the pill was magical and could be used to heal all sorts of external injuries. Every single item was precious, but the man had made it seem like it was all that he could afford at the moment. He was clearly sincere. However, Gu Shijio was not going to accept his offer. You don't need to give me anything. The wedding is all but a show. Juicy answered in all seriousness, I understand. Although it is only a show, I shall not take it for granted. These betrothal gifts are still a must. If anything, it will make this scheme look more believable. She was not expecting that answer, even though what he said made sense. Gu Shijio did not want to take advantage of him, so she offered him a few items in return. These are for you. Take these as my dowry. Gu Shijio had collected many magical items over the years. She had given him a universal bag, some herbs, and an impenetrable armor. She put these things on the table, which immediately outshone everything that Juicy had to offer. Juicy was dumbfounded at the sight of her generosity. He felt different, like a poor kid who was lucky enough to have met with a wealthy princess. Divine Lord, what you have offered are of much greater value than what I have given you, he bitterly said. Smilingly, Gu Shijio answered, as I said, if you agree to help me out, I will surely repay your favor very generously. Juicy wanted to defend himself, but was immediately interrupted. All right, you should take it easy. Let's talk about the details of the wedding. We should agree on a time and place, as well as a list of guests. Yes, we should really talk about the details of our wedding. What if we set the date a month from now? A sudden voice chimed in. Huh, isn't that a little rushed? Gu Shijio blurted out her thoughts, only to realize that something was not quite right. A sudden realization struck her, so she turned around to see who had actually spoken. The curtains were now lifted, revealing a man by the door. Apart from his exceedingly beautiful face, the typical purple robes immediately revealed his identity. Gracefully, Di Fui made his entrance. National Master D. Juicy got up to greet him with a bow. Gu Shijio took a look at the hourglass in the corner and realized that they were only due to meet half an hour later. Di Fui was early. Chapter 2872, Dowry and Betrothal Gifts. 3. Di Fui politely replied with a smile, It is all right. The moment Juicy stood up straight, he could immediately tell that there was something more behind the man's awfully courteous smile. Di Fui looked at him sternly in the eye and sent quick chills down his spine. After a short pause, he smiled apologetically and said, National Master D, I believe that you have heard our plan, haven't you? Should the wedding be carried in a month? Di Fui took a look at Gu Shijio before giving a nonchalant answer. Sure. You are invited to be one of our guests. Juicy was dumbfounded. Gu Shijio was about to take a sip of tea before Di Fui dropped the bomb on them. In response to his calm reply to Juicy, she spilled her tea all over the table. Di Fui no longer paid his attention to the other man in the room. Instead, he pulled a chair over to sit down by the table before grasping Gu Shijio by her hand. Baby, I have made up my mind. Let's have our wedding a month from now. You can pick anywhere you like. As for the guests, I will definitely invite all my friends and companions from all 6 worlds to witness our union. It will surely be a grand event. With shiver down her spine, Gu Shijio was utterly surprised to be called his baby. His words hit Gu Shijio hard in the face. She looked at him fixedly and could not believe anything that he had just said. She even forgot to pull her hand out of his awkward grasp. Wait a moment. What about our wedding? Di Fui slowly traced a strand of loose hair to the back of her ear. Stop messing with me, will you? The romantic gesture also came as a shock to her. Gu Shijio could not understand. How was she messing with him exactly? Injusi had dated enough women to get a brief grasp of their current awkwardness. He quickly studied the two of them and came up with a bold guess. From his point of view, the Divine Lord and Di Fui used to be together, but Di Fui must have done something unwittingly offensive, which resulted in an impulsive decision of Gu Shijio wanting to marry another man. Unfortunately, Injusi was the unlucky man who had become her rebound. He finally understood why the Divine Lord insisted on coming along with him to meet Di Fui, all three of them together. No wonder she wanted to talk about the plans for their wedding. It was all but a show for Di Fui. While he was still caught in the preoccupation, Di Fui could be seen pushing all of the gifts away. In fact, as soon as Injusi recollected all of the items, he was asked to leave. "You should go now," Di Fui suggested. Injusi also felt that his presence was completely unnecessary, given the current circumstances. He apologetically said, "All right, you both should talk. I shall go out and take a walk." He then turned and left hastily. Finally, the man realized that jackpots never existed. It was all but a trap. It was a nice dream, but it was now time to wake up. He needed to leave and spend some time alone. Gu Shijio finally freed her hand from his grasp. "Di Fui, what did you mean?" A suitable candidate was undeniably hard to come by, so his sudden interruption had ruined her entire plan. What was he trying to do? "Why didn't you look for me?" Di Fui locked his eyes on her. Gu Shijio took a look at the hourglass in the corner before replying to him. "It is not time yet. There is still an hour to go before we should meet." "I'm not talking about our meeting later. Why didn't you look for me when you needed a wedding? After all, I am your fiancé." Gu Shijio was surprised. "What are you talking about? What fiancé?" Di Fui rolled up his sleeve to reveal the bracelet on his wrist. Chapter 2873, Dowry and Betrothal Gifts. 4. Di Fui rolled up his sleeve to reveal the bracelet on his wrist. "Have you forgotten about the bracelet? This is a love bracelet, which means you are destined to be my wife." Gu Shijio was dumbstruck. In fact, she had tried many ways to get rid of the bracelet, but none of them worked. As time went by, the bracelet slowly turned invisible on her wrist. Since then, it never showed itself again. It reached the point where she had almost forgotten about it entirely. She took a look at her hand to make sure that there was no sight of the bracelet. Then, she took a breath before explaining herself. "As I said, it was an accident, so it does not count. See, the bracelet is..." She was about to say that the bracelet was not there, but little did she know that the bracelet was about to show up. First, she noticed that something was heating up on her wrist, and before she knew it, the bracelet reappeared on her wrist after a decade of disappearance. It made a rather surprising entrance. Gu Shijio was completely blown away, but Di Fui, on the other hand, decided to ask her a question on purpose. "The bracelet is what?" She had to change her sentence. "The bracelet is nothing special. It has been around for too long, so it is not functioning quite well." Di Fui looked at her intensely. "Let's talk." "About what?" "Our wedding." The discussion continued. The teapot was changed along with the cups. By now, other than the hot water, every other thing on the table was solely prepared by Di Fui. He had even brought the best kind of charcoal with him that smelled of fruitwood. Di Fui could hardly cook, but his tea brewing technique was quite impressive. Without a doubt, the tea leaves were of the highest quality as well. Since the brewing technique was better, the taste of the tea far surpassed the one prepared by Injusi. Gu Shijio had 3 cups of tea, which had given her enough time to tell Di Fui everything that he needed to know. She clarified once again that the marriage was not real, but only a show, as she needed to make sure that her disciple would give up on her once and for all. Di Fui agreed to play along. Also, he promised to perfect his acting skills so that no one would suspect that they were pretending. Deep down, Gu Shijio knew very well that Di Fui was the perfect candidate for her, but she refused to take advantage of him, so she had to turn her target to someone else. "Di Fui, there is something I do not understand. You may ask. You refuse to be my disciple, but you are willing to play along in this wedding game. Why? You have to know that for the next 3 years, you will have to play the role of my husband, which makes you a married man. If you happen to meet someone else that you like, you will not be allowed to marry her. Read more new novels on List Novel. Di Fui continued to play with the bracelet on his wrist before responding, I had never planned on marrying anyone, so that is not a concern. Gu Shijio had to correct him. It is hard to tell. It only takes a brief moment to fall in love. You have yet to find someone you truly like, but that does not mean that you will never find someone. Also, there is one more thing that you need to know. I am the god of creation. Even when I am married, I will not move out of where I live. Instead, the groom will have to move into the Tianyin Valley with me. Do you mind? You really need to think carefully about your decision. You should not force yourself into something you do not want. According to the social norm, a bride should move in with her groom and not vice versa, but not many cared about it. Di Fui was an arrogant man, so Gu Shijio suspected that he really needed to control his ego in order to move in with his bride or soon-to-be wife. Apparently, she had underestimated him. I have thought about it all. I agree to do it. Chapter 2874. We need to display our affection publicly. Gu Shijio remained quiet. All she could think of right now is that she was truly lucky to have met him. What do you need in return? She asked after heaving a sigh of relief. His quick response made Gu Shijio feel rather surreal. Di Fui looked at her intensely and said, I only have one condition. In order to make this look as convincing as possible, you are required to do exactly as I say. Okay, Gu Shijio answered without any hesitation. Di Fui was a great actor, so he would definitely be able to play the role of her husband and convince Fan Qianshi to give her up once and for all. The dowries were initially meant for Jusi were still on the table, but he was already out of the picture. Di Fui took a look at those gifts and kept them away hastily. I will keep these for myself, he said. Gu Shijio did not expect that he would be so obsessed with the gifts. What about my betrothal gifts from you? She quickly added. Di Fui blinked at her in confusion. I do not have many things. In fact, I can only offer myself to you. Also, I will be moving into the Tianyin Valley to live with you. So are the gifts really necessary? Gu Shijio did not know how to argue with him. Honestly, she did not really care about the gifts. It was only a show, after all. All he needed to do was to put on a good show. Read more new novels on List Novel. Then, they talked about the details of their planned relationship and immediately reached an agreement. The wedding would be held a month later, but before that, Gu Shijio would agree to spend some time with him in the Devil Kingdom. Di Fui told her that nothing would remain a secret forever, so it would be best if they were the only two who knew about their current situation. No one else should be informed. Otherwise, any spilled news would become clues for Fan Qianshi to find out the truth. Gu Shijio was still worried. But Jusi, he already knows about it. Di Fui gently squeezed her hand and said, Don't worry. Jusi thinks that you were only going after him for a fake wedding because we argued and you needed to vent your anger. He will never find out that our wedding is all made up. Gu Shijio finally heaved a long sigh of relief. She realized why Jusi left so hastily. At first, she thought that Jusi was so intimidated by Di Fui. It turned out that he was actually feeling awkward. What a misunderstanding, she thought to herself. She wanted to take a sip of tea, but realized that her hand was still in his hand. She could feel his warmth on her skin and felt rather uncomfortable. It felt as though there was a steady stream of heat slowly entering her veins. With a tug, she tried to free her hand, but could not. She wanted to try to pull away harder this time, but was distracted by someone coughing at the door. Jusi was back. Jusi was a man of sufficient intelligence and understanding. May I serve the food now? He had to ask for their permission first. Surely you may. Please come in and eat with us, Gu Shijio offered. Also, she felt the need to remind Di Fui again. You should let go of my hand, she said while giving another pull. Baby, we need to display our affection publicly. Di Fui only gave her a tight smile, without any intention of letting her hand go. Gu Shijio said nothing more. The moment Jusi entered the room, he felt terribly uncomfortable by the sight of the couple being overly attached to one another. Di Fui was sitting closely next to Gu Shijio, whilst holding her hand. It was as if they were glued together. Injusi had to move his eyes away from them, just to feel less awkward. He still had some doubts about their complicated relationship before he entered the room, but most of his suspicions disappeared when he saw the couple's current interactions. The man was once her fiancé, though just for a while. But it was not real. There was no way for him to find the courage to make any contact or even hold her hand. He needed to be mentally prepared before even moving slightly closer to her. Chapter 2875. We need to display our affection publicly. 2. Unfortunately for Injusi, the couple were getting very comfortable with one another in front of him and had no issues displaying their affection for one another publicly. As a result, Injusi chose to sit opposite them to keep a distance. Apart from watching them make plans for their wedding, he also had to witness many coolie moments from the pair. For example, Difui would prepare her tea and serve the dishes to her personally. He would even remove any shells from the seafood before serving it to his lady. The man had to inspect everything before Gushijio was served. Prior to this uncomfortable encounter, Injusi deemed himself to be a rather popular man among women, thinking that he knew everything that a woman wanted. However, what National Master D had displayed right before his eyes was way better than he could ever imagine. Many of the courtesies he offered to Gushijio were acts he could never see himself doing for a woman. Read more new novels on List Novel. Even though Gushijio looked a little reluctant to accept his chivalry, she did not turn him down. In fact, her slight discomfort made them look exactly like a couple that had just fought. In just that one meal with them, Injusi became fully convinced that they were actually a couple. With that, he felt lucky for not getting himself involved in their relationship. Otherwise, he would be right in the middle of their conflict. Not all was lost for Injusi, for Difui also took the time to talk to him about their next steps. Despite a brief discussion over a meal, Injusi was impressed by National Master Di's political wisdom and his well-thought plans. The man was indeed the pillar behind the rapid development of the two kingdoms he had graced. Moreover, he was well informed about the complicated organizational affiliation in the Devil Kingdom. Every man had his own character, but Difui already had it all figured out. His analysis included many names who had the potential to become his allies, and others who had the chance of becoming his enemies. Most importantly, he also came up with a list of people who could end up becoming his right-hand man. Every point was very well organized and articulated, so Difui did not need to talk much. Hearing his brilliant views expressed succinctly had suddenly enlightened Injusi. In return, Difui also asked for Injusi's opinions and listened to him attentively without uttering a single word when he spoke. By the end of the sharing, Difui gave him some advice and suggestions. Those included some priorities that he needed to sort out. Their discussion went quite far. They even started planning how to plot against the regent. Meanwhile, Gushijio listened to every bit of their rather important plan and sighed. It appeared that Difui seemed to trust her wholeheartedly, with no intention to keep her away from any of his plans. Despite being the creator of the universe, her primary role was to secure the peace and harmony of all 6 worlds by getting rid of, or at least reducing the impact of catastrophes that would cause great suffering. Yet, she was never interested in politics, nor had she been involved. She was far too superior to be involved in this sort of mundane discussion, anyway. Fortunately, she had spent enough time traveling to different places around the world to hear from the grounds itself about the public opinion they had of their leaders. She would typically disguise herself when she did so. However, no amount of research could solve the actual problem, which was her lack of involvement in politics. Therefore, the discussion had become an eye-opener to Gushijio. She remained quiet the whole time, not because she had nothing to say, but because of the impropriety of her political stance. As the creator of the universe, she was forbidden to make any plans for any party. Nevertheless, at the end of the day, Injusi left with a happy heart. Gushijio took a look at Difui, who was still sitting comfortably in the restaurant with no intention to leave. "Aren't you going to the Devil Kingdom? Why don't we go together with him?" "Now is not the time." Gushijio then took a sip of tea and continued. "The task you assigned to him will be quite a burden. Any miscalculation would send his whole family to their death. Aren't you worried about getting him killed by the regent? After all, he is the candidate that you have been looking for to replace the current Devil King. The execution of your plan depends on him. Di Fui briefly replied, if he cannot fulfill the tasks, it only means that he does not have the potential to be a good ruler. If he wants my help, he needs to prove his worth. Are you looking to become the uncrowned king of all 6 worlds? Chapter 2876. We need to display our affection publicly. 3. Di Fui answered confidently, why not? He then burst out laughing before continuing. The 6 worlds long for a time of tranquility and prosperity. I will do my best to turn the mess around and restore peace. His statement was nothing short of arrogant, but Gu Shijio did not find it revolting in any way. On the contrary, she found him quite attractive now that she had seen another side of him. Nevertheless, his attractive physical appearance also played a part in that. Since Gu Shijio was much older than everyone else, she found it difficult to be impressed by others. Di Fui, however, was an exception. He appeared to be a man of exceptional abilities, and more importantly, he seemed like someone whom she could trust. The more she stared at him, the more she felt a spark in her heart. Never had she encountered such feelings before, so she was curious too. Meanwhile, Di Fui reflected on her concerns and abruptly added, don't you worry. Gu Shijio was no longer on the same page. Was there anything that she should be worried about? As always, you will remain as the creator of the universe for all eternity. I shall never replace you, Di Fui reassured. With a smile and a gentle tap on his shoulder, Gu Shijio responded cheerfully, you have overthought. In fact, I cannot wait for you to take over my role. All of a sudden, she stopped speaking as she was not sure if she was allowed to reveal such a secret. Nonetheless, Di Fui knew that something was up. What about you? So that I can rest. Being the creator of the universe is quite an exhausting job. I would rather travel the world freely without any responsibilities or commitments. Di Fui rubbed her hair and replied, don't worry. When my job here in the 6 worlds is done, I will go everywhere with you, and we can do anything you want. It is just the 2 of us now, so there is no need for you to continue acting, Gu Shijio smilingly teased. He kept spoiling her, which was something she was not quite used to. She almost thought that he was being serious about getting married. Di Fui looked at her intensely. The show must go on. You have to get used to it. Otherwise, we will easily expose our secret. He responded with a smile. With a smirk, Gu Shijio answered, you are such a good actor. She then added after a sigh, I am glad that we are not enemies. Otherwise, I would surely have a hard time. She heard about the secret plans that he made with Injusi. Most of it was quite cruel and relentless. A chill ran down her spine when they exchanged their thoughts, as she had never thought that he would be this iron-hearted when he had to deal with his enemies. He would make a good friend or a disastrous enemy. Understanding what Gu Shijio meant, Di Fui sighed. Shijio, some things cannot be distinguished entirely between good and bad. As long as what we want in the end is good, the process should not matter too much. He was right. Not all war tactics were honest and forthright. Sometimes, violence must be met with violence. Sometimes, killing was necessary to prevent the loss of more innocent lives. One had to be tough during these harsh times. As the saying went, a good man would never rule for long. The current Devil King was a good example. In fact, he was a scholar. His poems were highly appraised by society. However, his poetic talent was not quite helpful when it came to the ruling of a kingdom. He did not have the eye for people and certainly did not know how to distinguish the good ones from the bad ones. Also, he did not have a firm stance on matters and listened to whatever he was told. Very often, he would find himself indulging in bottles of wine with beautiful companions by his side, possibly distracted by his enemies. And soon, his power of governance fell into the hands of the regent, thus putting the masses in dire poverty. When a king was a bad ruler, the kingdom would have to suffer with him. An innocent man would only get himself into trouble because of his power. He was obviously incapable of ruling, and yet he refused to retire. Thus, removing him was the only way. Di Fui's plan for Jusi was to get rid of the king through the hands of another man. Chapter 2877. We need to display our affection publicly. 4. This tactic was somehow dirty, but it was meant to minimize casualties. Even though Gu Shijio did not quite have first-hand experience in politics, she understood the general rules. It was just that she could not get involved in them herself. All of a sudden, Gu Shijio found herself staring at him in a daze. She somehow felt that she had seen him before, perhaps a few years ago. It was as if she recognized him from the past and knew deep down that he would be a decisive figure who could control the world and the life of people. But who he really? When she came back to her senses, she noticed Di Fui looking at her with a complicated expression on his face. Who are you thinking of? Her eyes were clearly on him, but it seemed that she was looking at another person through him, which made him a bit uncomfortable. Apparently, this person was really sensitive. Gu Shijio did not want to talk anymore. She got up and replied, "You have overthought. Well, since you don't want to enter the Devil Kingdom for the time being, let's just split up here. Contact me again when you want to go in." When she was with him, she felt inexplicably pressured. All she wanted now was to escape. But just when she was about to leave, she was grasped by Di Fui. "We can go in now. Come with me." Gu Shijio was speechless. She subconsciously looked at the hourglass and noticed that it was only half an hour past the time when they were supposed to enter the Devil Kingdom. Evidently, when he said that he would delay the visit, he only meant to delay it by half an hour. A melodious tune from Silk Bamboo sounded in everyone's ears. There was an azure ship in the air with 10 waiters and 10 maids at the back of the vehicle. White threads seemed to be floating on the vessel as the ship stopped in the clouds. This scene was unusually grand and also quite extraordinary. The people in Huanglai City had just witnessed an exceptional scene. They had seen various luxury cars of the dignitaries from a human and devil world, but it was the first time they had seen such a spectacular vehicle in front of their very eyes. Needless to say, many onlookers were gossiping with one another to identify the owner of the vessel. When Gu Shijio saw the ship, she could not help but look at it a few times. She commented casually, "It seems that the owner of this vehicle is a very unconventional figure. He actually got a boat to fly in the sky, dazzling like a peacock opens its wings. Baby, this is my ride. Let's go." Di Fui whispered in her ear and then pulled her by the hand and flew up onto the floating boat. Gu Shijio was speechless. She thought that Di Fui would enter the devil world quietly and then secretly wait for an opportunity to take action. She did not expect him to be so high-profile. Was he trying to make everyone aware of his presence? Read more new novels on List Novel. Moreover, this ship was so big and so dazzling. When it was flying in the dark sky of the devil world, it was merely a live target for his enemies. Wasn't he afraid of people in the devil world who wanted to plot against him? Di Fui had been traveling around the 6 realms for so many years, so there were quite a lot of people who could actually recognize him. What's more, after he got on the boat, the little fairy boy who stood at the bow of the ship opened up a big banner. The word Di fluttered in the wind. It seemed this man wanted everyone to know his name. The people on the ground were fiercely discussing the matter when they saw the banner from below. These years, Di Fui's name was so famous to the extent that even the common people were so excited when they heard his name. People in the human world and the devil world were secretly hoping that he could come to their own world because his arrival represented reformation and hoped that the people could live a comfortable life in the future. Now that he finally appeared in such a high-profile manner, the people were naturally excited and speculated about the purpose of his visit. Of course, the spies of the devil and human worlds had also quickly sent the news back to their own circles. While people were still guessing the purpose of Di Fui's arrival, they also noticed that Gu Shijio was with him. Chapter 2878. We need to display our affection publicly. 5. Gu Shijio was disguised in an ordinary woman's outfit, so when she stood beside Di Fui, it made her look somewhat dull. Over the past few years, Di Fui had slowly become the dream lover of countless girls in the 6 realms. However, he had always been self-disciplined. Apart from the ruler of the monster kingdom, whom he had once assisted, he had never been seen with other women. So now that Gu Shijio was standing beside him, so openly with Di Fui holding her hand, this naturally stirred the curiosity of the people, while simultaneously crushing the glass hearts of the numerous girls present. All of a sudden, there was loud buzzing going around with people trying to guess the identity of the woman next to Di Fui. Read more new novels on List Novel. Some guessed that she was an immortal from the Celestial Kingdom, while others speculated that she was the enchantress of the Devil Kingdom. There were even those who thought that she was his younger sister. Needless to say, a myriad of theories went flying around the place. Despite there being conflicting views on who the woman could be, there was one thing that everyone could agree on. The two of them looked like they were from socially different worlds. No one could understand why Di Fui would fall for such an ordinary woman. Was it true that only an ugly man could get a pretty wife? Do you want to restore your authentic appearance? Di Fui asked her. Gu Shijio did not care. No, I don't care about how I look in the public eye. Then Gu Shijio pulled a chessboard out of nowhere and said, "The journey is so boring. Do you want to play a game?" The little fairy on the boat also secretly looked down on the ordinary-looking Gu Shijio. However, since the crew was well-educated, they did not reveal their true feelings on their face. They merely despised her inside their heart. When they saw her wanting to play a game of chess with their master, they involuntarily sneered in their heart. Their master was a champion in chess. To their knowledge, he had never lost a game. In fact, he single-handedly defeated many chess masters on his own. Therefore, it was beyond their expectations that this woman would actually challenge their master to a game. Humiliation was perhaps the only thing that awaited her at the end. When they looked at the crisscrossing lines on the board clearly, they looked at each other and wondered, what is that? Was there such a chessboard? Di Fui's eyes also fell on the chessboard, and his heart was fretting. The chessboard was not an ordinary chessboard. In fact, the lines were like spider webs, which made people feel a little dizzy when looking at the board. The man took a look at the two groups of chess pieces. There were black pieces that shone like a meteorite, as well as white ones that were like clumps of snow. Both sets of chess pieces were dazzling like the stars. This chessboard is quite special. Let's play a few rounds. However, please note that this is my first time playing this type of chess. You have to tell me the rules. Di Fui was quite interested in it. Sure. Gu Shijio began to explain to him the critical details of the game and what he needed to note. Upon hearing the details, it was easy to conclude that this kind of chess was very complicated and cumbersome. The little fairies who were waiting to serve their master were confused when they listened to the explanation. Meanwhile, Di Fui remembered the critical elements after listening to it once and grabbed hold of the white chess pieces once Gu Shijio was done. Let's get started. Gu Ziji smiled and held the black chess pieces. Come on. The boat was driving speedily in the dark sky. They were now marching into the Devil Kingdom, and a light gray magical spirit floated around the ship as if trying to catch the people on board. However, before they could come near, they seemed to meet some kind of resistance and scattered away. The little fairies thought that they would inevitably encounter some magical spirits when they entered the devil world, so they had brought herbs to protect themselves. Nevertheless, they did not expect the spirits to flee so easily. Obviously, this ship was set up with a wizardry barrier that dispelled any spirits. However, in the past, they also followed Di Fui into the Devil Kingdom, and there was no such wizardry barrier protecting the ship at that time. Without the need to ask, the crew could tell at once that the ordinary-looking woman set the invisible wizardry barrier on the boat. Thus, their eyes quietly aimed in her direction again. Chapter 2879. I would risk my life for you after that incident. They no longer despised the ordinary-looking woman on board with them. In fact, prior to the wizardry barrier that she set up, the crew already knew that the woman was talented because of the way she played chess. Apparently, she had brutally beaten Di Fui in the 2 games that they played. Some of these fairy kids were also masters in chess, so they knew when someone was gifted. They originally wanted to learn the game from afar, but after they watched a few moves from the pair, They felt as though their heads somehow swelled and their eyes were dizzy. Some of them even lost their balance once they moved their eyes away from the board. After trying to figure out the game several times, they did not dare to look at it anymore. Their gazes were only locked on their master, and the woman sat opposite him. When Difui started playing the game, he did not seem to take it very seriously. However, after 2 moves, his face turned serious, and he seemed to think very carefully before every move. Nevertheless, he was still thoroughly defeated at the end. Difui did not give up and want to play another game. Gu Shijio agreed and even teased the man. If you feel uncomfortable, don't force yourself. Difui nodded. All right. Therefore, the 2 of them got down to the second game. This time the game lasted even longer than before, but in the end, Difui was still defeated. The main difference was that he lost fewer chess pieces than in the previous game. The man could not help but sigh. I have never lost a game of chess, and today I actually lost 2 games. To which Gu Shijio replied, You have already exceeded my expectations. She taught Fan Qianshi about this game before. At that time, she needed to repeat the rules 5 times before Fan Qianshi could even remember it. When they played their first game, he felt dizzy halfway through and needed assistance from Gu Shijio to get rid of his headache. Nevertheless, the end result was as expected. Fan Qianshi lost terribly and even slept for 2 days straight right after the game. Although Fan Qianshi's second attempt was better, the man could barely finish the game. He made plenty of careless mistakes and lost many unnecessary pieces. Overall, it was quite a miserable game for him. To date, Gu Shijio and Fan Qianshi had already played this type of chess hundreds of times. Although he did not lose so severely of late, he still needed to sleep for at least a day to restore his energy. Therefore, watching Difui play 2 games consecutively and still not look tired was already amazing. In fact, he actually looked more energetic than before. Certainly, this came as a big surprise to Gu Shijio. She thought about something and asked, Have you ever played this kind of chess before? Difui shook his head. No. If he had played such an exciting game before, he would definitely study it thoroughly and would not be so severely defeated like he was today. The man still wanted to play and asked Gu Shijio to play another game with him. Gu Shijio looked at him for a moment and then smiled. Well, I will accompany you today. So the 2 of them ended up playing chess for the entire journey. When Dihao reached this scene, he could not help but sigh. He knew that the chess that his mother taught his father to play was the starry game that he saw in a vision. It seemed that in his mother's subconscious, she still thought that Difui was the best candidate for the role. Even if he was not her disciple, she wanted to teach him something. Dihao's eyes then went to his mother's face, and he shook his head gently. As a man from the future and the next master of the heavenly law, he naturally knew some of the rules. Dihao knew that the world needed a god of creation as well as a master of the heavenly law. The god of creation managed the growth of the 6 worlds and ensured that they would thrive. However, the rules of the world would have to be governed independently by another party. The master of the heavenly law managed the rules, set rules for the 6 realms to enable the world to function. Chapter 2880. I would risk my life for you, too. The god of creation and the master of the heavenly law were needed to complement each other. It was apparent that the Difui of that generation was the master of the heavenly law. All his actions proved that he would sooner or later awake to be the master of heavenly the law and not take over the seat of the god of creation. When the god of creation descended, there would inevitably be a new replacement, and Fan Qianshi should be the successor. Dihao closed his eyes and thought about something deeply. He recalled something from his past in his mind. It was related to the ancient legends about the god of creation and the master of heavenly law. It was said that in ancient times, at the beginning of the world, the 6 realms had not yet taken shape, and several gods created everything in the world. When there were many sentient beings in the world, natural disputes were continually ongoing. At the time, the master of the heavenly law was born to formulate rules that govern the lives of all beings, including those in the heavens and the earth. He became the strongest among the gods. In the beginning, the changes were fierce. Natural disasters and man-made disasters ensued. Many gods experienced different catastrophes and became immortalized and slowly disappeared. Nevertheless, the relationship between the master of the heavenly law and the different gods of creation was excellent. They were all friends. 3 million years ago, there was a great catastrophe, and the remaining 8 gods of creation defended the world. Among them, 7 were immortalized. Before they disappeared, they entrusted the youngest among them to the master of the heavenly law. That lady must be Gu Shijio, while the master of heavenly law was Di Fui. When Di Fui was taking care of Gu Shijio, he gradually became affectionate to her, but he did not know that the gods of creation refrained from having emotional attachments to people. In fact, before they entrusted her to him, they took away her romantic feelings to make her unable to feel love. Therefore, she could respond to him and treated Di Fui only as a brother. 1 million years ago, another catastrophe hit, and it was Gu Zijia's turn to be immortalized. However, Di Fui went against the law and forcibly replaced her during the catastrophe. He managed to seal the source of energy that could destroy the world, but was exhausted to death from the process. On the other hand, Gu Shijio was severely injured and needed to hibernate for 10,000 years. When she woke up, she only remembered that she was the god of creation and would soon be in the process of immortalizing. Her subconscious asked her to find the next successor. And then, she found Fan Qianshi and met again with the reincarnation of Di Fui. Di Hao continued to watch the scenes between Gu Shijio and Di Fui with the tracing spell and sighed softly. Her mother has a being without romantic feelings while his father had fallen for her in his previous life. In the end, she only saw him as a friend. To add to Di Fui's misery, Gu Shijio was aware that she would soon be immortalized. During this time, it was unlikely that she would fall for anyone. Poor father. Di Hao was right about his predictions. The god of creation only treated Di Fui as a companion. During the few days they spent together in the Devil Kingdom, she played along with their plan and followed Di Fui's instructions to put on a public display of affection. She even held his hand when they want to visit the Devil King, but when no one was around, she would be cold and formal, not allowing Di Fui to be too close to her. Di Fui was a brilliant person. He had a clear strategy in his mind and was not impatient. Therefore, whenever she was cold to him, he just smiled and did not care too much about it. Needless to say, Di Fui's arrival caused an uproar in the Devil Kingdom, and the entire party belonging to the regent became nervous. Chapter 2881. I would risk my life for you. 3. The regent feared that Di Fui and the Devil King would jointly plot against him. Therefore, after Di Fui entered into the Devil Kingdom, he sent countless masters to have him assassinated, but each of them was unsuccessful. Not only did they fail to kill Di Fui, but the killers also did not even return. Nevertheless, the regent did not dare to send the army to intercept him blatantly. After all, Di Fui's reputation was too good around the 6 realms. He literally had friends across the globe. Even the rulers in the human and monster kingdom were his good friends. If he openly killed Di Fui, he would only be attacked by the other realms. Even without reference to the other realms, the prestige that Di Fui carried in the Devil Kingdom itself was already quite high. The people here admired him very much. Therefore, if the regent sent a large army to kill him, he would grow even more unpopular and might cause the people to rebel. So, the only way to go about it was to do it stealthily or not do it all. Since the several waves of assassinations had failed, the regent changed his mind and canceled his plan to remove Di Fui from the equation. In the end, he only spied on him to see who he would contact after he entered the Devil Kingdom. As Di Fui entered into his territory so publicly, it was only normal for the regent to hold a ceremony to welcome him. No matter how much the regent was afraid of him, he still needed to lead his people to at least come and greet him. The greeting ceremony was quite grand. Many magic flowers filled the place while water was scattered on the street as the people on both sides of the road were pouring out to join in the excitement. When Gu Shijio entered the city, What she saw was the lively scenes on the street. Meanwhile, the regent led the civil and military officials to meet with Di Fui and his crew from the boat. He spoke cheerfully. "It is our honor to have National Master Di to come to our Devil Kingdom. It is indeed a glorious occasion. May I know the purpose of your visit?" Di Fui leisurely smiled and replied, "2 months ago, the Devil King invited me to visit this place. Is he doing well?" The regent was suspicious of Di Fui's remark, but he did not show on his face. He said that the Devil King was not feeling well recently, so he could not come to greet Di Fui personally. After they chatted a while, his eyes then fell on Gu Shijio. He saw that Di Fui had been holding her hand, so he asked, "Who is she?" Di Fui answered with 2 words, "My fiancée." A single stone seemed to have stirred up 1,000 waves as his 2 words created noise in the whole Devil Kingdom. Many eyes instantly fell on Gu Shijio. There were some envious and jealous of her, and others that even despised her. Gu Shijio did not pay attention to them as she lazily yawned and said, "Fui, I am sleepy." She had been playing chess for a whole day with Di Fui. She was now exhausted. Di Fui immediately took her arm and let her lean on his body. "All right, I will take you to rest." He looked at the regent, as if awaiting some direction. The regent quickly said, "The new hostel has been cleaned up for you. National Master Di, please." They were now inside the hostel. After Gu Shijio followed Di Fui into the bedroom, she immediately stood straight and pulled her arm out from his grasp. "We no longer need to act. Anyway, you can go and get busy with your own matters now." Di Fui looked at his empty arm and smiled. "Why are you so sleepy? We only played a few games of chess. I want to take you to the streets. In fact, there are a lot of fun things in the Devil Kingdom." Gu Shijio sat on the bed and replied leisurely, "We have done enough acting for today. There is no need to go out anymore. Actually, I am somewhat curious. Why do we need to act this way in the Devil Kingdom?" Di Fui answered, "Do you want to bring me back to the Tianyin Valley and announce our marriage? Do you think that your apprentice will believe it? He would probably guess that you were just acting just to make him give up on you. Besides, he has many spies in the Devil Kingdom, so our actions here will surely reach his ears soon. It will be more believable this way." Chapter 2882. I would risk my life for you for, in that case, do you need me to restore my appearance? Otherwise, others will not know that I am your fiancé. Let's wait for a few more days. It is not the right time now. Di Fui did not want her to feel as though he was using her reputation to win him favors in the devil world. He wanted to rely on his own abilities to achieve his goal. Naturally, Gu Shijio did not know what he was thinking about in his heart, but she understood that he must have his own reasons for doing so, so she did not insist on anything. "Okay, I will listen to you." She waved at him again and said, "I am sleepy. Little Fui, you can go and do your own things now." Di Fui was stunned by her statement. "Can you take away the word little?" Gu Shijio was too sleepy and could barely open her eyes. "You are really much younger than me. Even if I am younger than you, you cannot address me this way." "Okay, I will address you as Fui then. By the way, you're not allowed to address me as baby either." Every time he called her baby, it always gave her goosebumps. Read latest chapters at List Novel. Di Fui walked out with a smile and left her with only one sentence: "I will try to." Noise from outside the room awakened Gu Shijio. "What's wrong?" She got out from under the cloak and opened the door. She was shocked by the big crowd of people assembled outside the hostel. It was a large group of women. Gu Shijio roughly estimated that there should be almost 100 people. These women were all dressed in a bright green uniform. When they arranged themselves together, they looked like overlapping leaves. These women were carrying a red sedan chair, and from where Gu Shijio was standing, the sedan chair was a little red mark in the clump of green, which was particularly contrasting to the eye. The curtain of the sedan was hanging down, and it was clear that the owner had not come out yet. When Gu Shijio opened the door, she heard someone said, "Well, she has come out. She has come out. Princess, she has emerged. She is so arrogant for making our princess wait here for for so long. Exactly. What's so great about her? Just because National Master D pampers her, she thinks it justifies her being so arrogant. There are lots of gossips about Gu Shijio coming from outside. Gu Shijio ignored the noise and turned to look at the servant outside the door. The servants quickly reported the incident to her. It turned out that she was the princess who was the youngest daughter of the regent. Before Di Fui left, he ordered the servant to make sure that no one was allowed to disturb her. Therefore, when the princess arrived, the servant kept the door shut and refused to inform Gu Shijio about her visit. This matter had caused a small dispute. Gu Shijio heard of this young princess before. She knew that the regent had 2 daughters and a son. The eldest daughter was Meng Liuxiang, who was sealed away by Yin Jusi at the peak. And the second daughter was the one who arrived today. It was said that her skills were decent, but her most prominent feature was her appearance. She was known as the most beautiful person in the devil world. Many people went to the regent to ask if they could propose to her even when she was still growing up. Ironically, she was more popular than her skilled sister. Since this princess was always the center of attention, she had grown to be very proud. She would not even concern herself with a commoner. The only person she wanted to marry was the most handsome man in the 6 realms. Gu Shijio was somewhat puzzled as to why this beauty would come to visit her. Did she come for the wrong person? She then turned to ask the servant, "Does she want to see me? Or is she here for your master?" Before the servant answered, there was a crisp voice that sounded like a bell that could be heard. "I want to see this girl." Chapter 2883. Being ignored, the princess' 2 servants raised their hand and threw out a red carpet for their master. The red carpet rolled all the way to the front of the hostel's main door. Then, one of the maids lifted the curtains open, and a woman came out and landed on the red carpet. Gu's Zygius gaze turned to the woman, and she whispered in her heart, "She is beautiful." The woman was wearing a red cotton yarn long skirt. The long dress was swept the red carpet like a rolling red wave as she walked on it. Her facial features were exquisite, and there was a kind of enchanting beauty in her eyes that was perfectly positioned below her eyebrows. Every move she made seemed to reveal a sort of charm that captivated those around her. She stood on the carpet with countless maids behind her. Even though she did not speak, she had an immense aura around her that made everyone feel tensed. As she looked around, her eyes were like a searchlight, sizing Gu Shijio up from head to toe. She finally asked, "Who are you?" Gu Shijio ignored her and turned to tell the servant something. "Don't allow this random person to come in. Please send the guest back to where she came from." Then, she turned, went back into the house, and closed the door. The princess did not expect that Gu Shijio would have no interest in talking to her. In fact, she was furious that someone would treat her so disrespectfully. "What do you mean? What do you mean by random person?" Princess, please step back." The servant interrupted. The princess had strutted over so grandiosely, so she naturally did not want to go back so awkwardly. She looked at her servant, and the servant immediately understood her intention. The maid went over and challenged Di Fuya's servant. What did she mean? "Our princess is so honored, and she is here personally to visit Gu Shijio. Are you going to greet her with this kind of attitude? If she is here to visit, she should know who she is visiting, right?" The servant left by Di Fui was excellent at criticizing people. The prince's face turned green. No one had ever criticized her since she was a kid. Therefore, she left her graciousness aside and continued. If she was not brought here by the national master, who would even want to visit her? I just want to see who she is. I never expected her to be such an ordinary woman. She does not even look any better than my maid. I don't understand why the national master likes her. Perhaps she has used black magic on him? These words were rather crude, so Di Fuya's servant frowned. When she was about to drive her out, a cold voice sounded from a distance. "Who has used black magic on me?" The prince's facial expression changed immediately. She turned over and saw that Di Fui had returned with his followers. In an attempt to dissolve the awkwardness of the situation, the princess forced a smile on her face and said, National Master D has come back at the right timing. I'm just coming to visit the girl that you brought, but I didn't expect her to be so arrogant. I don't quite understand. D Fuyi's eyes swept past her and toward the servant at the door. He asked coldly, I thought I had given you a clear order before I left. No one is allowed to disturb her. Did you not listen to me? The servant was scared and immediately kneeled. I'm sorry. The princess brought her people and came in forcibly. I could not stop her. After all, they were in the Devil Kingdom. When the daughter of the man with the highest authority in the area wanted to enter, there was nothing much that could be done to stop her. Moreover, she brought so many people along, so the four of them could not possibly have stopped them anyway. At this point, there were a lot of idlers inside and outside the hostel. When the princess came over so poshly, it naturally attracted a lot of people's attention. Many people came hoping to see a show. However, it seemed that the princess was utterly neglected. Although she felt hurt, she did not want to offend D Fuyi at this juncture, but she did not want to leave too. So, she just stood there and remained silent. Chapter 2884. Being Ignored. 2. In fact, the princess wanted to see for herself to what extent they would ignore her. D Fuyi was adamant not to give her any attention. He went straight into the accommodation and knocked on Gu Zijia's door. Ajio, do you want to accompany me for a walk? The door opened, and Gu Zijia's silhouette could be seen. She answered lazily, Where are you going? D Fuyi pulled her out and held her waist. It's not good for you to stay in the house all day. Let's go. I saw a few fun places that we can visit together. When Gu Shijio was held around the waist by D Fuyi, her body was slightly stiff, and she subconsciously wanted to push him away. However, D Fuyi sent her a directed audio in time. Cooperate with me. Thus, Gu Shijio held his arm as naturally as she could. Is there any delicious food for me to try? She was now more interested in eating. Of course. I heard about the braised lion's head in the devil world and their golden pheasant sea bream. Their meatballs stuffed with wine are good too, right? Gu Shijio gave a few suggestions. Well, I will take you to eat them then. The two people spoke to each other and left by themselves. They did not even look at the princess at all. Needless to say, she was speechless. It felt like a slap on the face for her. She wanted to vent her frustration. At this time, many pairs of eyes fell on her, as if she was a joke to them. In utter frustration, she yelled, Who is she? D Fuyi and Gu Shijio naturally ignored her. Meanwhile, the servant who stayed behind helped to answer. She is the fiancée of our national master. They're going to get married in a few days. The princess merely remained silent. Gu Shijio thought that D Fuyi was just putting on a show earlier. In fact, she did not expect him to really bring her to look for an authentic braised lion head restaurant. The delicious food in any area would always be located in the midst of the local community. Although all the famous dishes of the devil world were available in most restaurants, the taste was not particularly good when compared to the ones located in taverns scattered around small alleys. When D Fuyi brought her here, Gu Shijio thought that this was his secret den. Once the dishes were served, she tasted a few mouthfuls and praised, It tastes delicious. It is the best that I've had. How did you find this place? Her brows arched while she ate the delicious food. Meanwhile, D Fuyi smiled and replied, I knew that you would like it, so I had researched in advance before bringing you here. In advance? I didn't tell you in advance. I just mentioned about food in the hostel earlier, and you brought me here right away. When would you have had time to research in advance? Silly. You mentioned it in the glacier. Ah, did she mention anything to do with food at that time? Gu Shijio actually thought about it for a moment, but could not recall anything. Her memory was amazing, so she should have been able to recall it if they did talk about it. D Fuyi seemed to know what she was thinking about and quickly added, You mentioned it in your dreams. You had blurted out some of your preferences. Gu Shijio remained silent. She might have said it while she was dreaming. That would explain why she would have no memory of it. Nevertheless, that made her feel rather uncomfortable as it was somewhat awkward for the creator of the universe to talk about food in her dreams. It was very detrimental to her image. You have done many embarrassing things in front of me that have ruined your image, so you don't have to care about this one. You don't need to feel embarrassed. Gu Shijio clenched her fist as she could not deny it. Based on the embarrassing thing she had done in front of the man, there was no way she could go any lower. Therefore, Gu Shijiu decided to let loose and started to eat and drink more freely. She even reached out her open palm to him and asked, "Do you have any good wine on you? Give me a bottle. You can't drink right now. Let's wait a few more days." Chapter 2885. Being Ignored 3. Why can't I drink during these few days? You have a bad after-wine attitude, and we have to sleep in the same room. I am afraid that you might molest me if you get drunk. Gu Shijiu was speechless. What a douche. She would not be so unethical. However, she could not completely deny his statement, as she did get drunk and lose control lately. She did not have much confidence in her ability to hold her liquor right now. Perhaps, when all was done, she would come back and look for a restaurant where no one knew her and drink her heart out. Even though she could not drink, Gu Shijiu was not about to waste the opportunity to feast on the good food in the Devil Kingdom. In fact, she ate so much to the point where her stomach was slightly bloated. Thus, Difui brought her for a stroll on the street. As expected, Difui was well known by the people here. Anything he did would naturally attract the attention of a crowd, but right now, he was even patiently taking care of a woman. When the two of them walked together, they could already hear whispers coming from every corner of the place. Some curious comics even had the audacity to tail them. "Agio, how do you feel?" Difui asked her. I feel that I'm attracting a lot of hatred." Gu Shijiu continued. "Your ability to attract women is definitely very powerful. I can sense that many women here want to kill me. Did you deliberately bring me here to attract their attention? Are you jealous of the other women? Young man, you have overthought. I just think it's dangerous to be your date, especially when so many people are clearly after you. Didn't you notice the princess' reaction? When you left with me, she stared at me as if she wanted to swallow me up." In fact, Gu Shijiu could subconsciously feel a chill at her back. Difui gave her a rather confused look. "You are the great deity. Are you afraid of her?" Of course, Gu Shijiu did not care about her. She just thought that it was unnecessary trouble. Difui coldly continued, "I am acting as your fake husband. In fact, it is also very risky. Can you imagine once your precious apprentice figures out about our relationship? I'm afraid he might have the intention to rip out my heart." Speaking of which, Gu Shijiu felt somewhat guilty when she was reminded of the price Difui had to pay to play along with her request. She cleared her throat and replied, "I didn't look for you at first. I wanted to let Jusi do it, but Jusi's ability is suited as the future king of the devil world. His ability is limited. If your apprentice decides to take him down, do you think he can escape?" Gu Shijiu remained silent. She had actually considered this before and even thought about a backup plan. She knew was that Fan Qianshi would not dare to harm Jusi while she was still alive. So, just when she was going to immortalize, she would explain the truth to Fan Qianshi before she dissipated, and then force Fan Qianshi to swear that he would not do something unfavorable to Jusi. The promise would be binding, so it was very unlikely that he would go against it. Besides, once Fan Qianshi knew the truth, he should know that it was not Jusi's fault. At this point, he would not risk his life to go against a binding covenant. Nevertheless, she could not tell Difui about her plan. But she was actually curious about one thing. Did you volunteer yourself for this task so that Jusi would be protected? Difui choked for a moment. Then, he looked at her and smiled. Do you really think so? Gu Shijiu sighed. You don't even want to be my apprentice and have continuously asked me to set you free. Doesn't that mean that you don't want to have any relationship with me? However, this time, you suddenly took on this troublesome task and have even played along with everything. I can't think of the reason why you would endeavor to do so. Difui silently stared at her for a moment. She was looking at him too, and at that moment, he realized that her eyes were bright and calm. Apparently, she really thought so. He decided to respond half-jokingly. Maybe I really like you and don't want to be your apprentice. Perhaps I only want to be your husband. Gu Shijiu was stunned and subconsciously stared at him. Are you serious? I said maybe, so it may be true. Chapter 2886. Being ignored. 4. If that is the case, our arrangement will end here. I don't want to be involved in any relationships. There is no need to act anymore. Gu Zijia's pretty face turned cold and serious very quickly. Di Fuya's eyes deepened as he leisurely replied, "You made the right assumption earlier. Injusi is a leader that is rare to find. I don't want him to be sacrificed due to this matter. Therefore, I should take his place. Besides, I am not afraid of your apprentice wanting to seek revenge." Although he sounded a bit arrogant, Gu Shijio was partially relieved. Nevertheless, there was still a feeling of discomfort in her heart, but she tried to ignore it. During the night, in a guest house located at the suburb of the Devil World, Fan Qianshi sat on a chair with Yin Mingzhu standing in front of him. She was the daughter of the Devil King. Yin Mingzhu reported to him on Di Fuya's whereabouts. His presence in the Devil Kingdom gave her a glimmer of hope. National Master Di did not contact anyone since he arrived in the Devil World, but I saw him meeting Father several times. Do you think he is trying to assist my father in regaining his power from the regent? Fan Qianshi did not want to comment, but asked, "What did he talk to your father about? Did your father reveal anything to you?" Yin Mingzhu shook her head. "My father met him privately. None of the servants from either side was allowed to join the conversation, so I have no clue what they talked about." "You didn't ask?" "I did. My father said that Di Fui only talked to him about the customs here in the Devil Kingdom and did not say anything else." Fan Qianshi laughed. "Di Fui has always been a far-sighted person. Do you think he will dismiss all his servants just to chat with your father freely? How can you believe this?" Yin Ming's pretty face turned a bit red. "My father has never belittled me and will not lie to me. The Devil King was a talkative person. He could not keep a secret in his heart, and he always liked talking to his daughter. Therefore, there were few, if any, secrets between them. If some form of an agreement had been reached between the two parties, she was sure that her father would tell her. Fan Qianshi, on the other hand, found her to be quite ridiculous. You're so childish. Your father is the king of a country. After all, he will always consider his kingdom and community first. Once there are matters involving the Devil World, it is likely that he will not reveal everything to you. You'd better go back and ask him again about what they have discussed. All right. However, it is my personal belief that Di Fui really wants to help my father. Fan Qianshi sneered. Di Fui will only assist influential people around the world. Do you think he will help someone like your father? Yin Mingzhu was stunned and rather dissatisfied by his reply. What is wrong with my father? His main problem is the regent that stands in his way. Once he gets back his power, he will be a good ruler. Don't you want to help my father? Why? Fan Qianshi realized that he had crossed a line, so he gently replied, I understand what you are saying. However, Di Fui may not understand. I am afraid that he may not be truthful to your father. Maybe he is partnering with the regent to take complete control over the kingdom. When you go back, look for your father and keep him away from Di Fui. Rest assured, since I promised to assist your father, I will not renege. I am the disciple of the God of creation, and I will help you to protect your father. No one would dare to challenge me. I will definitely be loyal to your father. Chapter 2887. The plot. Yin Mingzhu sighed with relief. She still believed that she could rely on Fan Qianshi. When will you come forward to help my father to regain his power? I feel so annoyed every time I see the arrogant regent and his daughters. They are not even real princesses, but are pampered by everyone as though they are. It is too disgusting. Rest assured, it is not the right timing yet. I have made my arrangements. Once the time is right, I will come out and sort this matter out once and for all. It should not take too long to get this settled. Yin Mingzhu smiled after she got his assurance. Her eyes flashed with delight, and she replied, Qianshi, I always knew that you would help me. It's good to be your acquaintance. Fan Qianshi smiled and raised his hand to touch her hair. Silly girl. Although I don't like you romantically, I really treat you as a friend, and perhaps even as my sister. If you are wronged, I will help you." In Mingzhu bit her lips, nodded, turned, and was about to go. But Fan Qianshi suddenly asked another question. "Is the woman around Di Fui still following him around all day?" To which Yin Mingzhu replied, "They're a really loving couple. I heard that their wedding date is approaching. Whenever Di Fui is not in the palace to see my father, he will stay by her side all day and night. They hang out during the day and even sleep together at night. I guess they must have shared an intimate moment already. Strangely, the woman looks rather ordinary. I did not expect her to have such good fortune to catch the eyes of Di Fui. You don't know how much that bitch Meng Luqing is angry because of this matter. She can't wait to rip the body of the woman named Ah Jiao apart." Meng Luqing was the youngest daughter of the regent, the young princess. Yin Mingzhu did not like her for quite some time now. Hence, she could not hold herself back from uttering a few more harsh remarks. Meng Luqing always considered herself to be very pretty and only wants to marry the most handsome man in all of the 6 realms. When Di Fui arrived, she immediately fell in love with him and wanted to marry him. She frequently found reasons to approach him, but Di Fui did not have any feelings toward her. He even ignored her and embarrassed her in public. It was pleasing to see that. Fan Qianshi shook his head slightly. He did not believe that Di Fui would really fall in love with an ordinary woman. Perhaps he was only using her to act as a shield against other women. Nevertheless, Di Fui had always kept a distance from other women. If he only treated her as a shield, would he actually sleep with her? This contradiction really made it seem that Di Fui was falling in love with that woman. Fan Qianshi shook his head to dismiss any thought of that man. Besides, if Di Fui really fell in love with a woman named Ah Jiao, it did not really matter to him. At the very least, he has removed one rival to win his beloved's heart. Although he did not know the reason, Fan Qianshi somehow always had the feeling that Di Fui was not only a rival to him in terms of his career, but also in terms of finding a relationship. Seeing that the man had found himself a lover, he felt rather relieved. Perhaps he should even intervene to help them get closer. All of a sudden, he turned his palms over and poured a bottle of light liquid in his palm. He sniffed it slightly and pursed his lips. Then, he thought about the fact that Di Fui had slept with another woman. The 2 people, whether indeed in love or not, had slept together. His master was obsessed with cleanliness. So if Di Fui had slept with another woman, Gu Shijia would no longer be willing to have a relationship with him. Even if Di Fui became the ruler of the 6 realms, it would not make a difference. He clapped his hands together, and blue smoke appeared and landed on the ground. The smoke swiftly clumped together and turned into a child that bowed to him. Fan Qianshi handed the bottle to the child and whispered a few words to it. Then, the child snorted and turned away. Later, Fan Qianshi looked in the direction in which the child disappeared, wiped his hands, and smiled. Chapter 2888. The Plot 2. Fan Qianshi recently developed the drug. It was colorless, tasteless, odorless, and easily integrated into water. No one could smell it or taste it, but if someone consumed the drug, they would easily become wild like an animal and have an unprecedented thirst for sex. However, it only worked on men. As for the boy, it was a unique creature adopted by Fan Qianshi while he roamed around the 6 realms. It was not a fairy or a demon, but could change its appearance at will. It could easily transform itself into a dragon or a tiger if it wanted to as well. Its appearance would be indistinguishable. This time, he instructed the creature to transform into one of Di Fui's servants that he had brought along with him to the Devil Kingdom. Of course, to play things safe, it did not disguise itself into the servant boy that Di Fui kept beside him, but instead, the servant who did some of the menial chores. When Fan Qianshi managed to capture this being, he was keen to study its unique form and perhaps even experiment on it, but he did not expect it to end up being so loyal to him. In fact, it would do anything he asked it to do. Since then, Fan Qianshi took the opportunity to make it a spy for him. Any time that the man wanted to learn more about a person, He would send this creature to spy on matters from the inside. Over the years, it had never blown its cover, so it had won Fan Qianqi's trust. He truly believed that this time would not be an exception. Therefore, the task would be completed. Back in the Devil Kingdom, the regent was storming around furiously. The Devil King, who had always been a soft and spineless man, had suddenly stopped listening to his instructions. He rejected his decision in court and even got some ministers to back him so publicly. The regent's authority was faltering, so he was clearly infuriated. To vent his frustration, he argued with the Demon King in the Golden Hall. Under the influence of his anger, he was almost driven to use his magical blade to stab the king. Fortunately, he was stopped by one of the courtiers just before he did anything silly. The regent decided to leave at once, but was still angry when he returned to the palace. The king must have support from Di Fui. Otherwise, he will not dare to oppose you in court. Yeah, these days, Di Fui has come in and out of the palace to talk to the king. They must be discussing a plot against the regent. My regent, the king has already been dissatisfied with you from the start. Now that he has the support from Di Fui, I am afraid that he will be unfavorable to you in the future. Therefore, you must also make plans early. In a secret hall of the regent's palace, a group of courtiers loyal to the regent was discussing their next steps. All of them looked worried. Meanwhile, the regent's face was black. He kept silent, but his eyes were murderous. Do you think that Di Fui will really support His Majesty? I heard that Di Fui will only support people who had value and status. Nevertheless, the Devil King did not seem to have either. Some people questioned. We should also look to see if the Yin family has any talent that could potentially rule the Devil Kingdom. The Devil King has only one son and one daughter. His son is only 3 years old. He is too young and probably does not understand anything yet. On the other hand, there is nothing special about the princess. As for the Devil King's brother, Yin Jusi, he is also a useless man. He cannot be entrusted with any important matters. So overall, if Di Fui wants to make a mark in the devil world, who else can he assist? There's only the Devil King. It is weird. Our regent is so intelligent and has the ability to rule the kingdom. Why didn't Di Fui want to assist him? Someone felt that it was rather unfair for the regent that Di Fui did not consider supporting him. What is so strange about it? Di Fui wants to be the king of the 6 realms. He will only support a person he can control. Our regent is truly a person that holds power and doesn't need to be assisted. He naturally understands this, so he will not support our regent and has to come up with other schemes to take over the kingdom. Chapter 2889. The Plot 3. The regent's close men regarded everyone as a critical part of the team. Therefore, their discussions with one another were open and transparent. Little did they know that Gu Shijiu sat on a chair in the corner of the hall and quietly observed as these officials openly expressed their own opinions. She had quietly sneaked into the hall by using the invisibility spell so that no one would notice her presence. Basically, she could stay and listen on for as long as she liked. The regent's men brought up many of their concerns, thus intensifying the discussion. Nevertheless, eventually, all of them realized that instead of helplessly waiting for death to come, they should make a plot now to abolish the Devil King and crown a new ruler. The regent of the Devil Kingdom had long thought about the possibility, so he agreed to the plan immediately. However, he still had some concerns. The Devil King has been the ruler for a long time now. He knows how it feels like to be powerful and ultimately superior. So why should he leave his title so easily? I am afraid that it will only drive him into a desperate attempt to work together with Di Fui. I'm not worried about myself. Your safety is my concern. Everyone here has worked a lot for the future of the Devil Kingdom. If the king found out about the plan, all of you here would be as good as dead. The Devil King is a man of fatuousness, so I believe this is the sort of thing he would do. He would be driven to desperately offer Di Fui anything to maintain his power. In my opinion, we should fix this once and for all. The military officer then made a gesture implying that they should take the Devil King's life. Everyone else chimed in, and by the end, it was clear that these people were not men of virtue. They had sacrificed a great deal to be where they currently were, but did not plan to simply leave their position for nothing. Soon, they came up with a plan on how to murder the Devil King. By right, the Devil King's son would be the next in line to the throne and would get the regent's support. Truthfully, they did not care if the child had the capability to be a king. What they needed was a puppet, and a child was the easiest to be controlled. Gu Shijio heaved a sigh at their plans. However, things were only going the way that Di Fui had wanted. He made use of another party to get rid of the person standing in his way. So far, Di Fui had only visited the Devil King 3 times, and yet the regent was already so uneasy about it, to the point where he almost publicly murdered the king. It would seem that In Jusi's biggest obstacle had just been taken care of. What a great plan, she thought. Then Gu Shijio squeezed the voice recording amulet in her hand and let out a sarcastic smile. The entire conversation between these men was recorded, which would become the strongest evidence of their vicious crime. Gu Shijio managed to contribute a small part to Di Fui's plan, even without showing her power or authority. The evidence would be her token of appreciation for his kindness. Later, she took a look around the hall and realized that the place was heavily guarded. Without her teleportation and invisibility, she would never have made it through unnoticed. These officials must have thought that the place was safe, so they held nothing back, thus giving Gu Shijio a chance to record their dirty conversations. Now that she had what she came for, she refused to stay any longer. With a quick snap, she left the place. No one knew she had been there at all, and their discussions went on about things that she did not mind missing out on. When Gu Shijio returned, it was already noon. When she walked into the room and saw Di Fui by the table, indulging in some exquisite delicacies, Gu Shijio took a quick look and realized that every dish was her favorite. As soon as she entered the room, Di Fui seemed relieved. "Where have you been?" "I took a walk. Is there any nice wine?" she delightfully asked with a smile. Di Fui was glad to see her so happy. He did not mind putting in the effort to see her smile. Her presence had lifted his mood in an instant. Finally, he offered her a bottle of good wine. "Yes, have this one." Then, he poured out a glass of wine for her. It had been days since she last tasted some wine, so she became immediately hooked with the delicious scent. With a quick gulp, she downed a mouthful of wine. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.